Chapter 1722. Changes to the situation. Mo Yin seemed to have seen a sliver of light in the gloom when she heard Jian Chen's words. She immediately became hopeful. Is that true? You're really willing to take me along with you? Mo Yin looked at Jian Chen excitedly. Jian Chen nodded with a smile. I can take you with me, but you have to understand that the place we're going to right now is extremely dangerous, so I can't leave you outside. You have to listen to me and stay in my divine hall obediently. I can only ensure your safety like that. Jian Chen did not care about the other people of the Mo clan, but he had to take Mo Yin with him into God King Duanmu's dwelling. She would probably be doomed if she remained outside with her strength at sainthood. She was also the patriarch's daughter, so if the powerful clans in the Dong'an province learnt about God King Duanmu's dwelling, she would not be able to escape. Without much delay, everyone in the clan disguised themselves and dispersed. Even though all of them were doubtful, they knew that the Mo clan was facing unprecedented trouble since the ancestor wanted them to disperse like mist and hide. For hours later, the entire Mo clan was emptied. All the clansmen had left and only a few elders and the patriarch were left. They all hovered in the sky as they had watched everything unfold with mixed feelings. Brother Jianchen, let's go, Mo Ling said to Jianchen. Jianchen glanced past Mo Yin. With a wave of his hand, the bright moon divine hall immediately appeared from nowhere, hanging in the sky as a huge divine hall. The appearance of the divine hall immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. Whether it was the elders of the Mo clan or the Ando clan, they all stared at the structure with much interest. They all wondered why Jianchen carried such a fragile divine hall despite the great strength he possessed. This was because the elders could all tell with a single glance that the bright moon divine hall was not tough. Even origin realm cultivators could smash through the divine hall, while just the shockwaves from a fight between godhood experts could reduce it to pieces. It was just fragile. Miss Mo Yin, please remain in the divine hall for some time, Jianchen said to Mo Yin. At the same time, the door of the divine hall slowly opened. Jianchen, you have to let me out once you get to a safe place, or I'll suffocate to death in there, said Mo Yin before bidding farewell to the patriarch and Shiyu. She pouted and made her way into the bright moon divine hall reluctantly. The patriarch opened his mouth. He wanted to say that he had an even better storage treasure that could withstand several attacks from deities without being destroyed. It was countless times stronger than the bright moon divine hall, but just when the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them back down. This was because once they entered God King Duanmu's dwelling, it did not matter if it was the bright moon divine hall or his own divine hall. They would all be as fragile as paper before any attack once they entered the dwelling. It would be the same regardless of the divine hall Mo Yin stayed in. The important part was whether the person who carried the divine hall had the power to protect it or not. Everyone became fully prepared before longer. Just as they were about to set off, Jian Chen's face changed. He immediately became grim and soon afterwards, Mo Ling and Ando Fu's faces changed slightly as well. They all turned their heads in the same direction. To no surprise, it was where the dark cloud mountains stood. Two powerful presences suddenly appeared where they were looking, shooting towards the Mo clan with lightning speed. The presences were tremendous, causing the clouds to churn and winds to rise. Clearly they were gods. It's the ancestors of the Nanyun clan and Ho family from the provincial city, Mo Ling said with a stern voice. He had discerned their identities before they had even appeared through their presences alone. There were only so many gods in the Dong'an province, and every single one of them had lived for many years. As a result, even if the gods had never spoken to each other before, they knew each other. People from the provincial city have actually come to the Mo clan. Has the Liu family really leaked the news about God King Duanmu's jade? And the news is already spreading across the Dong'an province? Jianchen thought. Cold light flickered in his eyes. In just a few seconds, the two gods arrived above the Mo clan. They stood 100 meters away from Jianchen's group. As expected, the two people were two of the three gods who were sent to watch over the dark cloud mountains. They had left the mine at the same time. One of them had headed to the Ando clan, while the other two directly went to the Mo clan. Mo Ling, Ando Fu, where are you planning on going? What has happened to your Mo clan? Why have all your people left? What's happening? A white-robed young man acted like he was surprised as he looked around with some uncertainty. He was a god from the Nanyan clan. Even though he only seemed to be in his 20s from his appearance, he had already lived for several tens of thousand years. The god from the Hua family beside him studied the surroundings constantly as well. In the end, his gaze focused on Mo Ling and Ando Fu, and the light in his eyes flickered as well. That is an internal affair of my Mo clan. There is no need for other clans to interfere. Sirs, I still have important matters to attend to, so I won't be spending any time with you. Farewell. Mo Ling clasped his hands and said calmly, "Stop." Just as Mo Ling finished speaking, the god from the Hua family called out. With a flash, he arrived behind Jian Chen's group, pincering them with the god from the Nanyan clan. Huolian, what are you trying to do? Mo Ling's face sank. He stared at the god from the Hua clan sharply. The god smiled indifferently. Mo Ling, I'm only curious about the important matter that you have to attend to. It's so important that you even had to disperse the entire Mo clan. Please quench my curiosity. That is a matter of my Mo clan. Even if your Hua family is one of the more powerful clans in the Dong'an province, you have no right to interfere with my clan's matters, Mo Ling said coldly. The god from the Hua family stood with his arms crossed. He smiled confidently and said, Mo Ling, if you don't do as I wish and satisfy my curiosity, I can't let you leave. Just when the god from the Hua family finished speaking, the crisp resonance of a sword rang out in the sky. The temperature in the surroundings plummeted and snow filled the sky. A silver-white sword shone brightly as it shot towards the ancestor of the Hua family with lightning speed. Chapter 1723. Opening the dwelling, the flying sword moved extremely quickly. Coupled with Huolian's proximity, there was only a flash, and the sword arrived before Huolian. Huolian's face changed drastically. When he blocked the path of the people from the Mo clan, he had been expecting Mo Ling and Ando Fu to attack him, so he had always maintained his vigilance. However, even with how he was expecting an attack, the appearance of the glowing sword still frightened him to the point where he became covered in cold sweat. The streak of light moved just too quickly as if it had teleported. The person who struck out showed no prior signs of moving either, so by the time the god reacted, the sword had already stabbed towards his forehead. In this moment of life or death, Huolian bellowed out and laws of fire encircled his surroundings, forming layers of protection while origin energy surged out violently from his body, instantly condensing a shield. However, Huolian's defenses were completely useless before the streak of light, unable to stop it at all. The light tore through all his defenses, and was driven straight towards Huolian's forehead. Huolian's pupils had narrowed to the size of needles, reflecting the streak of light that approached with lightning speed. In the end, the streak of light plunged into his forehead under his gaze of disbelief. It was directly driven into his brain. His soul shattered, and he died. Huolian's eyes were filled with much regret as life rapidly drained from them. He had not even used his battle skills or protective treasure. Instead, he was killed from just the first strike. Huolian fell slowly, falling towards the ground from several hundred meters high up in the air. Jian Chen had already appeared where he was standing before, holding the flying snow sword that was dripping with the god's blood. Huolian's space ring had ended up in Jian Chen's hands as well. Huolian! Huolian! Huolian's dead. The young man from the Nanyan clan watched everything unfold in a daze. His heart surged. Huolian's strength was similar to his, at early god, yet he had been slain in a single stroke, unable to fight back at all. That meant that he could not even escape if the same person wanted to kill him as well. Run! The god from the Nanyan clan paled in a single moment. Without any hesitation, he began to flee as quickly as he could, disappearing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Linear lightning release. Jian Chen was emotionless. He turned into a bolt of lightning in pursuit, and caught up instantly. Under his almost dazed gaze, Jian Chen passed through the chest of the god from the Nanyan clan, and charged out from the other side. The god from the Nanyan clan grunted. His eyes widened as he stared at Jian Chen, who had just pierced through his chest in disbelief. He was scared witless. He had lived for over 100,000 years, yet he had never seen such a terrifying sword technique before. Who are you? I'm from the Nanyun clan. You can't kill me, the god said with a hoarse voice. On the surface, there was only a bowl-sized hole in his chest, but Jian Chen had already reached the great perfection of sword origin now. His sword techniques were so powerful that just a single attack had claimed half of the early god's life, incapacitating him completely. You shouldn't have come here, Jian Chen said coldly and directly drove his sword through the god's forehead, destroying his soul. Jian Chen had realized that the news of God King Duanmu's dwelling had been leaked with the arrival of the gods from the Hua family and the Nanyun clan. They had probably come to verify the information. Once they learned that the news of God King Duanmu's jade was true, all the powerful clans in the Dong'an province would definitely mobilize their entire clan and hurry over as quickly as possible. As a result, he refused to let the two of them pass any messages to their clans. After taking the space ring from the god from the Nanyun family, Jian Chen flew towards Mo Ling. In the distance, Mo Ling, Andofu, and the various deity elders all stared at Jian Chen in disbelief. They had gained a new understanding of Jian Chen's strength. Although they had witnessed Jian Chen crush Lu Tian, it was nowhere near as shocking as the current scene. The god from the Hua family had actually been slain by a single strike. This was just too shocking to them. Gods were figures who held the position of ancestor in the organizations in the region. They were experts who stood at the very apex of the province, yet they were so fragile before Jian Chen. Jian Chen's talent really does make me envious. Shen Jian was the calmest person among the group. It could be said that he had watched Jian Chen grow from a puny saint emperor to his current state. He understood just how terrifying Jian Chen's talent was. It was not just this life. Even in the past life, Jian Chen's talent was famous, where no one could compare to him. He had already become invincible in the Jianghu at a young age. Yen'er actually saved such a powerful person. Shiyu became filled with mixed feelings. She had completely objected to Mo Yen saving Jian Chen and Shen Jian, but she had never thought that the two people Mo Yen saved would become the saviors of the Mo clan. The information about God King Duanmu's jade has probably been leaked. We need to hurry to the dwelling as soon as possible, Jian Chen said to Mo Ling and Andofu. Let's not waste time and go right now. Mo Ling was also grim. He immediately led everyone towards the location of God King Duanmu's dwelling. Before long, Jian Chen's group arrived at the boundary between the Lu family, Mo clan and Ando clan. An ancient mountain range that spans several tens of thousand kilometers stood there. The origin energy in the area was relatively thin, with a few weak magical beasts living there. It did not seem to be anything special from the surface, so people rarely set foot here. Mo Ling and Ando Fu had become the guides, while Jian Chen and Shen Jian followed them closely into the depths of the mountains. Behind them were around a dozen deities from the Mo clan and the Ando clan. In the depths of the mountains, Mo Ling and Ando Fu stopped before an extremely ordinary mountain peak. Mo Ling said, "We're here. The entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling is right here. Let's assemble God King Duanmu's jade and open the dwelling." Jian Chen took out the two pieces of jade without any hesitation, and Mo Ling also took out the jade in his Mo clan's possession. The three pieces hovered in the air, radiating with a suffocating pressure. Before the pressure, even Jian Chen, Mo Ling, and Ando Fu could not help but become stern. The three pieces of jade assembled by themselves and joined together, forming a perfect piece. It shone with ink-green light as a mysterious power surged from within the jade. It connected with the surroundings and seemed to fuse with certain laws, immediately causing the space there to tremor. The space rippled like water, blurring everyone's vision. As space trembled, a tremendous and terrifying pulse of energy was emitted, causing the clouds in the sky to rapidly disperse. The entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling was opening. Stop! At this moment, a bellow rang out from the distance. 4 figures appeared in the distant horizon, hurrying over at full speed. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, Mo Ling, and Ando Fu all looked over and became grim. "Oh no, they're from the Wainer clan," Mo Ling said in a stern voice. Chapter 1724. Holding them out alone, 2 mid-gods and 2 early gods, Jian Chen murmured. He also frowned before glancing at the opening dwelling. There would still be some time before the dwelling opened. What a powerful pressure on the soul. Even my soul trembles before this pressure. It must be the jade pendant that contains a sliver of the power from God King Duanmu's soul. They're opening the dwelling right now. Quick, quick. Speed up some more. We can't let them open the entrance to the dwelling. Once they make it in there, the dwelling will close up. When that happens, we won't be able to enter even if we know where it is since we don't have the key. We have to steal God King Duanmu's jade no matter what. It's the complete jade pendant. Once God King Duanmu's jade ends up in our hands, the legacy and wealth of God King Duanmu will all fall into our Wainer clan's hands. Heavens, that's a legacy of a supreme God King. Ha ha ha, the heavens are shining on our Wainer clan, allowing us to obtain such a great fortune. Our Wainer clan will definitely produce God Kings in the future. The 4 old men from the Wainer clan stared at the dwelling that was slowly opening, and their eyes all became green with greed. Their hearts seemed to have lost control as they beat heavily despite so many years of peace. At this moment, excitement, joy, and other emotions flooded their minds. In their eyes, God King Duanmu's jade already belonged to them. This was because they could tell with a single glance that Mo Ling and Andofu were only gods, early gods as a matter of fact. On the other hand, the ancestors of the Wainer clan comprised of 2 early gods and 2 mid-gods. The difference in strength could be described as the disparity between heaven and earth. Quick, charge over and kill them. Destroy the Mo clan and the Ando clan. Kill all of their people. God King Duanmu's jade is ours. Desire burned in the eyes of the 4 ancestors. They were overly excited, to the point where their faces had already become completely flushed. One of them had already begun laughing aloud crazily. Ha ha ha, we're going to obtain God King Duanmu's jade. Xiaoyi has done a great job. It was he who told us the reality of God King Duanmu's jade, which was why we could make it here so quickly. By the time the other clans in the Dong'an province have verified this news, we would have already entered the dwelling. As for our own clans, ha ha ha, our Wainer clan will have God Kings in the future. Rebuilding the clan will be a piece of cake. The 4 gods from the Wainer clan were all ravished with joy. The heavens had blessed them, allowing the fortune to fall directly into their laps. However, what they did not know was that the overgod ancestors of the Ando clan, Mo clan, and Lu family had already searched through God King Duanmu's dwelling for many years already. Not only did they fail to obtain God King Duanmu's legacy as overgods, but they had all died in there. The 4 gods of the Wainer clan moved extremely quickly. They arrived in the depths of the mountains in the blink of an eye, and they were quite close to Jianchen and the others now. Jianchen's gaze was sharp. He surged with soaring sword chi. The moment the 4 gods entered the depths of the mountains, he also stepped out, directly charging towards the 4 of them. At the same time, he said without even turning back, "Keep opening the entrance. I'll stop them." When the 4 gods saw Jianchen charge over aggressively, their faces became filled with heavy killing intent. They no longer cared who was before them today. They would kill anyone who stood in their way of obtaining God King Duanmu's jade, even if it were the 3 most powerful clans in the Dong'an province. Those who stand in my way will die. Die. No one can stop me from getting God King Duanmu's jade. You petty thief, piss off. The 4 gods all bellowed out. At that moment, they had really lost their minds. They no longer cared whether Jianchen was at the origin realm, whether he was a deity, or whether he was a god. They all struck out with their full strength towards Jianchen at the same time. They had almost lost all their rationality before the enticement of God King Duanmu's legacy. Whether it was a God King's legacy or a God King's treasure, any single one of them was enough for puny gods like them to become fatally attracted. This was because God Kings were indomitable existences in their eyes. Existences that they could only look up to, let alone a supreme God King who made it onto the God King's throne. The 4 of them struck out with their full strength. Powerful origin energy formed huge sword chi with the power of laws. A total of 4 sword chi shot towards Jianchen with great might. Jianchen was stern. Against 4 gods, he did not dare to be careless, especially when 2 of them were mid-gods. Although his comprehension of laws had exceeded the 4 of them, reaching late god, his personal cultivation was still not as great. He was only equivalent to a deity. Sky-severing strike. Jianchen raised the flying snow sword high above his head. As snow danced in the surroundings, the light on the flying snow sword expanded to several hundred meters long, and he directly cleaved down with it. With the strike, an invisible domain of the sword formed, making it seem like space had frozen. The four gods were surprised. Before Jianchen's attack, they all felt an extremely great threat. In particular, the two early gods experienced an even more intense sense of threat. Boom! The huge streak of light struck the sword chi from the four gods heavily, immediately erupting with a great boom. Terrifying ripples of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing mountains to collapse and the ground to crack. The entire world seemed to be trembling violently. The powerful ripples of energy forced all the elders of the Mo clan and the Ando clan to retreat. None of them managed to remain stable. Only Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and Xinjian remained where they were. However, the dwelling that was slowly opening up was not affected at all. Clearly, the shock waves were not enough to shake up the formations around the dwelling. Jianchen's body drifted back, by a few meters as well. He wielded the flying snow sword as he hovered there emotionlessly. Violent streams of energy crashed into his body, making his clothes and long hair flutter. The four gods before him all came to a halt as well. The two early gods had even staggered backwards, only stabilizing themselves with great difficulty after falling back 100 meters. Jianchen's sword technique posed an extremely great threat to any single one of them. He could even heavily injure or kill an early god with the strike. The four gods only managed to reach a stalemate when working together. Chapter 1725. Poisoned. The four gods from the Weiner clan all stared at Jianchen in shock. Originally, they only saw Mo Ling and Ando Fu as gods. Although they had seen Jianchen as well, they treated him as nothing important, as they could already tell that it was impossible for Jianchen to be a god. In fact, when Jianchen charged towards the four of them to stop them from approaching God King Duanmu's dwelling, the four gods had still treated Jianchen like he was nothing. His attempt to block them had excited their intense killing intent instead. As a result, the four of them had all struck out of anger. It was an attempt to remove all obstacles using the most direct method possible. Originally, they believed Jianchen would be reduced to pieces from their attacks. However, they had never expected for Jianchen to not only survive, but to even reach a stalemate with the four of them. This was what shocked them. "Sir, who are you?" a god asked coldly. A vicious light flickered in his eyes. His name was Weiner's son, and he was one of the two mid-gods of the Weiner clan. Jianchen stared at the four gods of the Weiner clan with his sword in hand. He said coldly, "Who I am is not important. Please leave." "Ha ha ha, just you won't be enough to make us leave." Weiner's son laughed aloud. His eyes shone with extremely heavy killing intent. They had to obtain God King Duanmu's jade. No one could stop them today. "You're dreaming if you want to take the jade for yourself. Kill him." The other mid-god ancestor of the Weiner clan, Weiner T, said coldly. A huge sword appeared in his hand with that. It shone with an earthen yellow light. He swung the sword and sent strands of power from the laws of earth towards Jianchen. At the same time, Weiner's son moved as well. A huge, twin-headed axe appeared in his hands. It flickered with black light as the power of laws revolved around the blades. He bellowed out and immediately swung the axe towards Jianchen's head as a dark streak. Space suddenly began to ripple as the axe was swung out. Space actually became heavy as if it had been frozen at that moment. Jianchen felt his body sink all of a sudden, as if a mountain had crashed onto his shoulders. He felt extremely heavy. The flying snow sword in his hand had become extremely heavy as well, despite how it was supposed to be as light as a feather. His clothes stuck to his skin closely, becoming as heavy and stiff as steel. Laws of gravity. Jianchen thought. Chaotic force rampaged in his body as he pushed his chaotic body to its limits. At the same time, streaks of light rapidly gathered in the surroundings, forming a dazzling, protective layer around Jianchen. It isolated him from the surrounding space, keeping the laws of gravity at bay. He stabbed out with the flying snow sword as it shone with golden light. Sword chi surged and the resplendent light illuminated the surroundings. It had become as dazzling as the sun. Daoyuo sword. With a rumble, all the laws of gravity that permeated the surroundings collapsed. Terrifying shockwaves of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing the mountains to quake. Golden sword chi was scattered in every direction, piercing the mountains in the vicinity. Wainer T and Wainer Sun both shuddered as they drifted away uncontrollably. They both became grim. Jianchen's body also wavered slightly, and he staggered back a few meters uncontrollably. His clothes had become rather messy. Wainer T and Wainer Sun had clearly struck out with more power than before. Gravity domain! Wainer Sun bellowed out. His soul fused with the surroundings, connecting with the world. The laws of gravity gathered on him before dispersing as a streak of darkness. It formed a domain that enveloped Jianchen. Like a fish in water, Wainer Sun's battle prowess immediately soared inside the gravity domain. Force of the earth. Wainer T gripped his sword with one hand while forming a hand seal with the other. He extended a finger towards the ground below, and the ground immediately began to wither with that. The mountains that were originally teeming with life withered at a visible rate, becoming barren mountains. Visible strands of tremendous energy gathered rapidly from the ground, condensing into a hazy piece of earth before Wainer T. It directly rammed towards Jianchen with a rumble. Jianchen was encased in his protective light, such that only a blurry figure was visible. He fought against Wainer T and Wainer Sun within the gravity domain with great intensity. They all surged with battle intent as sword chi shone brightly. They fought to the point where the domain constantly distorted and tremored violently as if it would shatter at any time. Wainer Sun did his best to maintain the domain while launching a constant barrage of battle skills and secret techniques towards Jianchen. On the other hand, Wainer T erupted with his full strength. He also used various battle skills and secret techniques constantly, resulting in a devastating battle. The other two gods of the Wainer clan did not take part in the battle against Jianchen. Their gazes burned with desire as they became blurs. They charged towards Mo Ling and Ando Fu as quickly as they could. They wanted to take God King Duanmu's jade. The faces of Mo Ling and Ando Fu changed slightly. The two of them had gone through the battle between the three clans earlier, so they were both injured. It would be no problem for them to handle deities, but they would not be the opponents of gods. In particular, Ando Fu had been injured by Jianchen's linear lightning release, so his injuries were even worse. He struggled to even use half of his strength as an early god. Boom! Suddenly, a great sound rang out. Wainer Sun's gravity domain had finally been destroyed. The moment it shattered, Wainer Sun's presence suffered a huge hit. He spurted blood as he endured an intense backlash. Jianchen immediately charged out. He swung the flying snow sword, sending two powerful sword chi towards the two early gods of the Wainer clan to stop them. However, at this moment, Jianchen sensed something. He turned around and stabbed out without any hesitation at all. A dark light had silently shot out of Wainer Ti's hands with lightning speed. Although Jianchen managed to stab the streak of dark light with great precision, the black light that was split in half continued onwards without slowing down at all. They stabbed Jianchen so quickly that he was unable to dodge. Even the protective light around him was unable to stop it. Jianchen immediately experienced excruciating pain, as well as a sense of numbness. His skin actually blackened at a visible rate. It's poison. Jianchen's heart shivered. His chaotic Niden spewed out strands of chaotic force as he devoted himself to stopping the spread of the poison. This is the stinger from the soul-devouring wasps of the worldless abyss. This is where all their poison is concentrated. It is certain death for late gods once they become poisoned by this, and it'll even cause some trouble to over-gods. Sir, the only person you can blame is yourself, for getting in our Wainer clan's way. You can't blame us. However, you'll be able to die without regrets since you're dying to this poison stinger that our clan bought by paying a great price in the royal city. Wainer T said coldly. Chapter 1726. Overgods descend. Even if I'm poisoned, I can still stop you from entering, Jianchen said coldly. He stood sturdily with an indomitable spirit, blocking the enemies all by himself. The formations outside God King Duama's dwelling had finally been activated. A space gate ripped open there, revealing the chaotic space inside. Everything was blurry. Quick, brother Jianchen. Come. Emo Ling's voice rang out from afar. The four gods of the Weiner clan burned with desire. At that moment, the four of them could no longer bother with Jianchen. They directly made their way around Jianchen as they charged towards God King Duanmu's dwelling as fast as possible. Even after suffering a backlash, Weiner's son ignored his worsening condition and used a secret technique to charge towards the dwelling with his greatest speed. With me here, none of you will be entering the dwelling, Jianchen said coldly. He suppressed the poison within him as he blocked their path. A great battle erupted amongst the four of them once again. However, even after being poisoned, Jianchen did not seem to weaken at all. He remained extremely powerful, keeping the four gods of the Weiner clan busy all by himself. Not only were the four of them unable to approach the God King's dwelling, but they were even forced further and further away from it by Jianchen's barrage of attacks. Spurt! Spurt! After around a dozen clashes, the two early gods from the Weiner clan were heavily injured by Jianchen. They constantly spurted blood. Only Weiner T and Weiner Sun remained locked in battle against Jianchen. They produced monstrous sounds as wild energy shockwaves wreaked havoc in the surroundings. They tore the clouds to shreds and tipped whole mountains, reducing the depths of the ancient mountain range to a mess. It was no longer the same as before. The elders of the Emo clan and the Ando clan had already entered God King Duama's dwelling. Only Emo Ling and Ando Fu remained waiting outside. A gleam of light flickered through Ando Fu's eyes as he watched Jianchen fight against the four gods in a devastating battle. He began to hesitate. He clearly felt some doubts. After all, if he entered the dwelling right now and closed it, Jianchen would not be able to do anything to him from outside. However, as soon as he thought of Jianchen's terrifying speed, he shivered inside. In the end, he abandoned the bold thought. This was because he knew that even if he entered the God King's dwelling, it was impossible for him to obtain anything. He did not even consider God King Duama's legacy. Even their three over-god ancestors could not obtain it, so it was even more impossible to end up with him, a puny early god. Jianchen was already covered in blood as he continued to engage in a vicious fight against the four gods. He had clearly suffered some wounds, and he had lost some control over the poison within him, so it had begun to spread again. He would experience excruciating pain wherever the poison spread to. After that, he would experience numbness as if he would lose control of whatever place the poison reached. What powerful poison! Jianchen's heart sunk slightly. He asked Emo Ling secretly, "Brother Emo Ling, how long does it take for the entrance to the God King's dwelling to close?" 10 seconds, replied Emo Ling in a similar fashion. "All right. You two enter first and close the entrance." "I'll come within 10 seconds, Jianchen responded. Emo Ling hesitated slightly. He soon made up his mind and immediately entered the dwelling with Ando Fu, and also put away God King Duanmu's jade. Without the support of the jade, the entrance to the dwelling immediately began to close up slowly. No, the four gods of the Weiner clan all cried out as they bathed in blood. They were all filled with regret. Madness filled their faces as they all charged towards the entrance of the dwelling. "Piss off!" Jianchen bellowed out and blocked their way, preventing them from approaching the dwelling. "Don't block my way. Let me in. I want to enter the dwelling." "Sir, why must you do this to us? Why don't we work together? We can enter the dwelling together to obtain the fortune. There's no need for us to suffer together. Let us into the dwelling. We'll owe you a favor. You can get us to do anything in the future." The four gods of the Weiner clan were all extremely flustered, but they were unable to break free from Jianchen. They all began to state conditions for Jianchen to let them through. By now, 6 seconds had already passed and 2/3 of the entrance had closed. Jianchen did not waver at all. He stabbed out with the flying snow sword with lightning speed. Paying the price of a few more wounds, he forced the four gods who had basically lost their minds back by a few thousand meters. The entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling became smaller and smaller. "No, no, no. Let me in. Don't block me, let me in. We already know where the dwelling is. If you don't let us in, we'll announce the location to the world. You'll only be able to hide in there for the rest of your life." "Right. If you don't let us in, we won't let you have it easy. Once the location is announced, experts will definitely gather here. You're done for once you come out. The gods of the Wainer clan roared out angrily. Their eyes became bloodshot as they became filled with intense unwillingness and hatred. The entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling had already shrunken to the size of half a person now. Jianchen frowned when he heard the words of the four gods. He turned around and saw the closing dwelling. He launched a strand of Daoyuo sword qi, forcing the four people back, before using the linear lightning release. He turned into a bolt of lightning, and charged into the dwelling a moment before it had closed up completely. He could vaguely hear the mad roars of the four gods the moment he entered the dwelling. The entrance closed and the surroundings calmed down very soon. From the outside, it was very difficult to imagine that a space gate to God King Duanmu's dwelling was hidden here. The four gods of the Wainer clan were all enraged. Their faces were terrifyingly sunken. They immediately announced the location of God King Duanmu's dwelling as quickly as possible, immediately causing a huge uproar in the Dong'an province. After all, this news had come from the ancestors of the Wainer clan personally. Without a single doubt, this directly confirmed the existence of God King Duanmu's dwelling, and was not a tall tale told by people who had nothing better to do. With that, none of the powerful clans in the Dong'an province were able to sit still anymore. All their gods set out, heading to where the dwelling was located as quickly as possible. At the same time, the matter spread towards the other provinces of the divine kingdom of Pingtian like wildfire. It spread across the 36 provinces as soon as possible, reaching the royal city and even the region beyond the kingdom. It caused a huge commotion. In a short amount of time, the location of God King Duanmu's dwelling became the place where gods gathered. Several dozen gods stood in a crowd there, with their numbers rapidly rising. It reached triple figures very soon. At this moment, a terrifying presence that made all the gods present tremble crushed down from above. A hunchbacked old man slowly drifted down with a dragon-headed staff. He radiated with a supreme presence. An overgod. Heavens, overgods have hurried over so quickly. Chapter 1727. The Yubing clan. With the appearance of the hunchbacked old man, the clamor immediately died down. At that moment, everyone's gaze was gathered on the old man with the dragon-headed staff. Reverence and fear poured out from their eyes. The deities and origin realm cultivators gathered in the surroundings were all forced into a rapid retreat by the old man's tremendous presence. All of them turned rather pale. The huge disparity in strength made them find it difficult to breathe under the old man's presence, as if a mountain sat on their chests, making them suffocate. For that time, the hunchbacked old man became the center of attention. He seems to be the ancestor of the strongest clan in the frigid snow province, the Yubing clan. That's right. I haven't seen the ancestor of the Yubing clan before, but I have seen an image of him in the past. He really is the one from the Yubing clan. The frigid snow province possesses one of the 5 most powerful provincial cities in our divine kingdom of Pingtian, and this is all because of the Yubing clan. Because of their overgod ancestor, their status is supreme within the divine kingdom of Pingtian. All the gods gathered there communicated with one another secretly. None of them dared to speak aloud, including the people from the 3 most powerful clans of the Dong'an province. The hunchbacked old man walked around in the space of the area. His powerful soul that was at the level of overgod scanned the region there time and time again. He performed a close search and did not forget any corners at all. The old man's soul was rampant and overbearing. He did not try to keep it concealed at all. As his soul expanded, everyone present sensed a great pressure. Some of the origin realm experts even experienced splitting pain in their souls, immediately frightening them into retreating. They left the mountain range. Overgods are actually so powerful. Just the senses of their souls make me feel so pressured. Is this the strength of an overgod? It's so terrifying. It really does fill me with anticipation. I wonder if there'll be a day I reach overgod in my life. Many gods were secretly shocked and felt even more fear towards the hunchbacked old man. A while later, the hunchbacked old man dismissed the senses of his soul. A pressing light flickered through his ancient eyes, and he sighed in amazement while staring at the space there. It really is the dwelling of a supreme god king. It's actually so well hidden. Even when I stand near the entrance and search carefully, I can't find anything. The old man then looked around at the surrounding gods, and his old voice rang out. Who knows the precise location of God King Duanmu's dwelling? Wainer T immediately flew over and bowed towards the old man politely. After stating his origins, he pointed towards the entrance and said, Senior, the entrance is right there. I've personally witnessed the people of the Mo clan and the Ando clan enter the dwelling through there. The old man arrived at the place where Wainer T had pointed to with a single step, and he extended his staff towards the space there. All the gods present felt an extremely terrifying energy strike the space when the old man made his move. It immediately caused them to pale. Although the old man had not directed his attack towards them, they could sense just how terrifying the strike was from the side. Even mid-gods would die instantly if the attack landed on them. The space there remained the same as before after taking the old man's strike. Aside from the rampant origin energy there was nothing abnormal. What an impressive method. I actually can't find the entrance to the dwelling at all. The entire dwelling has been hidden in space, making it impossible to sense from the outside. The old man frowned. Jianchen gathered with the people of the Mo clan and the Ando clan within the dwelling. Currently, they stood at the entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling, except the entrance was closed now. It could only be opened again with God King Duanmu's jade. Brother Jianchen, are you fine? Mo Ling arrived before Jianchen and asked with great concern. What he saw was that Jianchen had been dyed red with blood. Beneath his red robes, most of his skin had blackened. The poison had spread severely as if it had almost reached the point where he could not keep it at bay anymore. After all, this was a poison that could even claim the lives of late gods, and it could even cause some trouble to over-gods. If it were not for Jianchen's chaotic body, making his body extraordinarily tough, he probably would have been reduced to a puddle of liquids long ago. Jianchen shook his head. The poison is potent, but it can't kill me. I'll force it out of my body immediately. With that, Jianchen sat down and began to circulate his chaotic force as hard as he could to fend off the poison. Xinjian and Mo Ling immediately stepped up to watch over Jianchen. They stared at Andofu cautiously. Clearly, they were worried about Andofu the most. Andofu also understood that he was not trusted, so he made his way to another side and sat down, knowing what to do in the situation. He continued to heal himself while the elders of the Ando clan all stood around Andofu. Andofu had become extremely fearful of Jianchen. Even though he knew that his sneak attack against Jianchen would probably be effective right now, he had lost the courage to do something like that. This was because he knew that even if Jianchen was forcing out the poison, he would still remain vigilant about the world around him. Andofu would probably be killed mercilessly as soon as he moved. Xinjian also sat down nearby to continue his recovery. However, he did not drop his guard at all. Everyone rest for a while. The dwelling is extremely dangerous, so do not move individually, Mo Ling said to the elders before guarding over Jianchen. Under his full power, the poison in Jianchen was controlled very soon. Forced by the chaotic force, the poison that had spread across a large portion of his body began to recede. At the same time, strands of chaotic force that had filled Jianchen's blood, flesh, and bones surged out, beginning to drive away the poison. Jianchen's chaotic force was still weak. It was not true chaotic force and was nowhere near true chaotic force in terms of power. However, it was still a kind of chaotic force after all. The poison was naturally not its opponent. Almost an hour passed before Jianchen's eyes snapped open. He extended a finger towards the ground, and a pool of poison immediately shot out. It came into contact with the tough, stone floor and emitted a series of hisses, eating away a small hole through the tough floor at a visible rate. Brother Jianchen, you forced out the poison so quickly? Mo Ling was shocked when he personally witnessed this. The poison could kill late gods after all. It's fortunate that this poison is not of a particularly high quality. It can only poison gods to death. If it could poison over gods to death, I probably would have been done for, Jianchen said indifferently. Just poison that could claim the lives of gods did not pose too great of a threat to him. However, once he came across anything stronger, he would be in trouble. Chapter 1728. Fairy Haoyu's departure. Mo Ling immediately praised Jianchen when he heard that. Admiration filled his eyes. Ando Fu, who was sitting nearby, opened his eyes as well. He glanced towards Jianchen and thought to himself, what are the origins of this kiddo? A poison that can even claim the lives of gods poses no threat to him. I refuse to believe that he's a god. Although his comprehension of laws has surpassed mine, I can tell that it seems to remain at the level of gods from my battle with him. There really isn't origin energy in God King Duanmu's dwelling at all. We can only replenish origin energy through divine crystals, pills, and heavenly resources. Jianchen looked around and murmured to himself. He guessed that the formations of the dwelling had cut off the origin energy of the outside world. Although there was no origin energy here, Jianchen could sense that radiant saint force filled the surroundings. Radiant saint force and origin energy were two vastly different energies. Any origin realm or sainthood cultivator could sense origin energy, but only radiant saint masters could sense radiant saint force. The formations within the dwelling could keep out origin energy, but it was unable to keep out radiant saint force. Cultivating as a radiant saint master would be quite a good choice in here. Except it is not the time for that right now. My battle prowess as a fighter is beyond mid-god, but my abilities as a radiant saint master only makes me equivalent to a saint emperor. Even if I can increase my abilities in here, it'll be very difficult to raise it to the point where I can threaten gods. Aside from that, my usage of radiant saint force remains at the level of the lower world. Even if I do make any improvements, it won't really make me more powerful, Jianchen thought inside. He no longer thought about the radiant saint force and focused on healing. Jianchen completely relied on the chaotic force to recover, and did not use any radiant saint force at all. Clearly, he did not want to expose his identity as a radiant saint master before Mo Ling and Ando Fu. Several hours later, Jianchen made a full recovery, but Shen Jian had only recovered from a third of his injuries after ingesting the medicine that Mo Ling had given him. After all, the amount of time that had passed was simply too short for him to make a full recovery. After recovering, Jianchen began to tidy through everything he had obtained. He basically carried all the wealth of the Ando clan and the Lu family on him right now. There were also the 2 space rings from the gods of the Hua family and the Nanyan clan on him. There are close to 10 million low-grade divine crystals, with several tens of thousand mid-grade divine crystals. There are actually even more high-grade divine crystals than mid-grade ones, reaching into the 200,000s. Looks like the Lu family excavate all of these recently. Joy flooded Jianchen's eyes. The number of divine crystals made him overjoyed, as they were enough for Shen Jian to progress to late deity. They had been trapped in the God King's dwelling now. Although Jianchen did not know about the situation outside, it was obvious that various experts had already gathered, encircling the entire entrance. Under such grim circumstances, the stronger the people on his side were, the better it would be. There's also quite a few cultivation methods and battle skills as well as notes on cultivation. There are even quite a few pills. There's recovery, healing, and, what's this? Jianchen's eyes narrowed. With a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared silently. On it was a label that said, 100-Year God Origin Pill. Brother Jianchen, this is a pill for cultivation. It's even useful for gods. There are a total of 3 levels, which are 100-Year God Origin Pills, 1000-Year God Origin Pills, and 10,000-Year God Origin Pills. They can directly give you a century, a millennia, or 10 millennia's worth of cultivation. The ones you possess are 100-Year God Origin Pills, which can directly increase your cultivation by 100 years' worth. Each pill is invaluable. However, the effects of the pill are brutal as well. It's extremely overbearing such that any carelessness can result in heavy injuries from the backlash of its medicinal effects. At the same time, using the pills to increase your cultivation will leave behind many great problems. Consuming too many will make your foundation unstable. Mo Ling introduced the pill to Jianchen. Clearly, he understood these pills very well. A strange light flickered through Jianchen's eyes. Without any hesitation, he uncapped the bottle and discovered that there were actually 10 pills in there. 10 pills will give you 1,000 years worth of cultivation. That's equivalent to a 2nd-grade immortal tier violet cloud peach. However, there are 10,000-year God origin pills. Just a single one of them will be even more effective than a 9th-grade immortal tier violet cloud peach, Jianchen thought. Although 100-year God origin pills were not particularly useful to him, 10,000-year God origin pills would be extremely helpful if he could find any. A single 10,000-year God origin pill contained as much origin energy as a regular cultivator could absorb over 10,000 years. However, this total would differ depending on the talent of the person, their cultivation method, and the environment. The origin energy absorbed by a person with ordinary talent might only be equivalent to a few hundred years of effort by someone with impressive talent. This period would be even shorter if it was a prodigy. After all, the number of years' worth of cultivation a pill could provide was only a unit of measurement. It did not mean it was equivalent to 10,000 years of cultivation for everyone. Brother Emoling, may I know where I can find 10,000-year God origin pills? Jianchen asked. There's one in the royal city. It's said that the divine king of the divine kingdom of Pingtian brought it back from some other divine kingdom. It has always been on sale in the auction center within the royal city, except it hasn't been sold even after several tens of thousands years. It's just too expensive, and no one is bold enough to consume a 10,000-year God origin pill. God origin pill are known for their brutality, so the backlash will be even more terrifying for a 10,000-year one. They'll probably end up exploding and dying once they ingest the pill before they can increase their strength at all, said Emoling. A 10,000-year God origin pill. Jianchen murmured inside as he secretly made up his mind. Once he made it out of here, he would do everything he could to exchange for a few 10,000-year God origin pills. The pill might have been a type of poison to others, but it was something fantastic for Jianchen who cultivated the chaotic body. He was not afraid of the backlash from the pill, and he could directly ignore any destruction to his foundation. After tidying through everything, Jianchen gave a few divine crystals to the people of the Ando clan and the Mo clan. He gave the rest to Xinjian, as well as all the recovery and healing pills. The pills would be more useful to Xinjian than himself in here. Jianchen treated the people from the Ando clan fairly. Every extra person in the dwelling would be some extra power. He might still need them in the future. Jianchen was in no hurry to search through God King Duanmu's dwelling. Even 3 overgods had died in here before, so he probably could not even save his own skin in here. As a result, the matter at hand was to increase his own strength as well as to give Xinjian enough time to break through. Jianchen took out the formation discs he had found in the space rings of the gods from the Hua family and the Nanyan clan. He gave one to Xinjian and used one for himself, casting down a defensive formation around him that could even withstand several attacks from gods. Afterwards, he sat down and prepared to condense the second strand of profound sword chi. Formation discs were extremely common treasures in the saints' world. They were created by formation masters who engraved their formations into the disc. A person could activate the formation inside a formation disc regardless of their understanding of formations, allowing them to use it either against their enemies or to defend themselves. Jianchen, when do you plan on venturing into the dwelling? Just when Jianchen was about to refine the second strand of profound sword chi, Fairy Haoyu's voice suddenly rang out. Fairy Haoyu, you know that I'm rather weak right now. I'll probably be doomed if I venture in hurriedly, so I have to increase my strength, Jianchen replied. It was exactly Fairy Haoyu that had urged him to enter the dwelling in such a hurry. Basically, it was her who wanted to enter the dwelling. Jianchen, I'll scout ahead first and see if I can get lucky and recover my body. Once you emerge, just attack any of the formations in the dwelling, and I'll return immediately. I'll guide you as well, said Fairy Haoyu. Her illusionary soul then drifted out, forming a hazy figure before Jianchen. Fairy Haoyu, are you familiar with this dwelling? There are quite a few formations in here. Even overgods can die. In your current state, Jianchen asked with some concern. The corner of Fairy Haoyu's lips curled up scornfully. She said, these formations aren't enough to garner my attention unless that kiddo called Duanmu has some mastery over formations. Jianchen, don't you look down on me. I'm just a soul, and I won't even be able to defeat Origin Realm cultivators, but I can move around as I wish in here. Kiddo. Jianchen had no idea how to respond when he heard Fairy Hao Yu refer to God King Duanmu as such. With that, Fairy Hao Yu set off by herself. She passed the control over the Bright Moon Divine Hall to Jianchen. If it weren't for condensing the perfect body, why would I still be in the form of a soul right now? I can't count on the high-grade divine crystal mine for now. I just hope that the things in here don't disappoint me. Vaguely, Jianchen seemed to hear Fairy Hao Yu's grumbling. Chapter 1729. 5 overgods afterwards, Jianchen entered seclusion and began to condense his second strand of profound sword qi. Not only had his battle prowess increased after reaching the great perfection of sword origin, but the strength of his sword techniques had increased by several folds as well. Even the strength of his first strand of profound sword qi had grown. In the past, he had almost directly slain the ancestor of the Liu family with his first strand of profound sword qi. At that time, his profound sword qi only posed a fatal threat to early gods. Against mid-gods, it would only heavily injure them at most. However, now that he had reached the great perfection of sword origin, he was confident that he could directly kill mid-gods even without refining the second strand of profound sword qi. If he condensed the second strand and used them together, he could even kill late gods in a single strike. At that time, no one below Overgod would be able to threaten him anymore. When Jianchen entered seclusion, Mo Ling and Ando Fu entered seclusion as well. They wanted to comprehend the mysteries of the world and reach mid-god. Both of them were at the peak of early god while their bodies were filled with origin energy, so they were unable to absorb any more origin energy. They only required the comprehension of laws. Once they deepened their comprehension, they would reach mid-god. If they failed, they would remain as early gods for the rest of their lives. As they began to cultivate, the deity elders of the Mo clan and the Ando clan all sat down and began cultivating in seclusion as well. They had already entered this place many times, so they completely understood the dangers. To ignorant outsiders, God King Duanmu's dwelling was a land of fortune ready to be excavated, but to the people who were familiar with this place, it was a grave. As a result, they did not dare to move on their own without the lead of their ancestors. A few days later, Shen Jian made a full recovery. However, he did not immediately emerge from seclusion, and instead continued to cultivate with his divine crystals. Basically, all the divine crystals Jianchen had obtained were given to Shen Jian. Even the high-grade divine crystals given to the patriarch of the Mo clan before to maintain the protective formations had been returned to Shen Jian. Shen Jian now possessed a large number of divine crystals of various grades, so it was more than enough for him to become a late deity. In the past few days, more and more gods gathered outside God King Duanmu's dwelling. They no longer only came from the Dong'an province. Across the 36 provinces of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, over 80% of the gods had gathered there. Quite a few gods from other divine kingdoms had gathered here as well. Perhaps God King Duanmu's dwelling was nothing attractive to other god kings, but it was something irresistible for gods and overgods. In particular, overgods desired to enter God King Duanmu's dwelling even more. They all hoped that they could come across the fortuitous encounter they needed to become a god king inside the dwelling. The overgod from the Yubing clan of the Frigid Snow province always remained near the entrance of God King Duanmu's dwelling. He tried various methods to enter, but all of them failed so far. However, he still did not give up. "Bing Lu, you've sure come quickly." Suddenly, an ancient voice boomed out, causing all the mountains nearby to tremble. A ruddy old man strode over with a sword on his back. He radiated with soaring sword qi, which was both sharp and brutal. He did not walk quickly, but he would cross a great distance with each step. He arrived before the overgod of the Yubing clan with just a few steps. It's the ancestor of the Ling family from the sword-seeking province, Ling Hogong. Heavens, another overgod. Duke Ho was a subject of the divine kingdom of Pingtian in its founding. It's said that he went to war with the divine king before founding the divine kingdom of Pingtian, in this large expanse of land. The divine king bestowed a region to Duke Ho, which became the sword-seeking province of the 36 provinces. Duke Ho has devoted his life to the sword, becoming infatuated with it. As a result, he changed the name of the province he came from to the sword-seeking province. The Ling family controls the entire provincial city, and they don't have to pay taxes to the royal city either. It's all because Ling Hogong was a subject of the kingdom during its founding. There are over a dozen overgods in our divine kingdom of Pingtian, but there is less than a handful of overgods who can enjoy Ling Hogong's treatment. The hunchbacked old man looked up and glanced at Ling Hogong. He said steadily, "Is there any use in coming early? Haven't I still been blocked outside as well? God King Duanmu's abilities really are great. Even when you stand at the entrance, you can't tell there's anything here." I'm guessing God King Duanmu hid his dwelling in space and protected the entrance with powerful formations. However, since there are formations, attacking it will definitely lead to a response. "Let me try," said Ling Hogong. With a crisp thrum, the sword on his back was drawn. He wielded it in one hand, and his presence completely changed. The figure of a huge sword seemed to condense around him as he directly slashed out. Ling Hogong's laws of the sword had already surpassed sword origin and reached sword spirit. The slash caused the origin energy in the surroundings to fall into disarray. A sharp sword intent filled the surroundings as if even the air had sharpened. All the gods gathered in the surroundings retreated. Although Ling Hogong had directed his slash at the space, the sword chi that permeated the surroundings still made them shiver. However, even with Ling Hogong's slash, the entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling failed to appear. There were not even any pulses from any formations. The entrance to the dwelling is too well hidden. "There's nothing I can do," Ling Hogong sighed gently. If it were not for Bing Lu who had told him where the entrance to the dwelling was located, he would have even believed it was just ordinary space. "Ha ha ha, none of you have entered, so it looks like we're not late." At this moment, another loud voice rang out. 3 figures approached the region rapidly. The tremendous presence they gave off had reached the level of overgods as well. "Feng Buell, Gohan Shui, Eugene, you've come at the perfect time. Let's see if you can open the entrance." Ling Hogong's eyes immediately lit up. These 3 figures who flew over were the other 3 overgods from the 5 great provinces of the Divine Kingdom. They were Feng Buell of the Feng family, Gohan Shui of the Gohan clan, and Eugene of the Yu family. Aside from Eugene, who was a gray-haired old man, the other 2 both seemed to be in their 20s. One was male, while the other was female. Feng Buell was dressed in white robes. He seemed handsome and elegant. Gohan Shui, on the other hand, was an alluring beauty. Chapter 1730. The young man with a fan Feng Buell squinted when he heard that. He walked around the entrance of God King Duanmu's dwelling a few times and immediately became interested. He said, "The entrance is hidden in space. It's so great that even with my eyes, I struggle to tell its existence. However, I just happen to have studied formations a little, so I can try." At the same time, there was a bustling city in the neighboring divine kingdom of Qingyang. A man who only seemed to be in his 20s strolled through the busy streets slowly with a fan in his hand. The corners of the young man's lips were slightly perked. He seemed rather impudent as he observed the surroundings with great interest, as if he found it all to be extremely novel. Behind the young man was a burly man who seemed to be in his 20s. He followed the young man closely. The man was extremely ordinary. He did not give off any presences at all, making him seem like an ordinary person. The outside world really is colorful. I've only strolled around on this street, and my horizons have already been broadened. It's not like back in the clan, where I see the same faces day and night. It has reached the point where it's bothersome. I've only passed through the trials after much desperation, so the oldies back at home finally allowed me out. This time, I'll have all the fun I can get. Unless they call me back, I'll never return." The young man played around with his fan. He was in extremely good spirits. "Young master, you've come out to train and toughen up, not to play," reminded the man behind him. "Uncle Qin, isn't training just playing? And isn't playing training? Isn't it all the same?" The young man said slightly unhappily. "Young master, of course they're not the same," the middle-aged man said seriously. Before he could finish talking, the young man shrugged and said, all right. Uncle Qin, I understand. Let me stroll around first, and I'll go train later." At this moment, A luxurious carriage towed by 9 rare beasts ran down the street. The expressions of all the people on the two sides changed when they saw the carriage, and they opened up a path in a hurry. In particular, the women who had some beauty paled in fright. It was as if they had seen the most terrifying matter in the world, and they all fled in a hurry. At this moment, a golden rope emerged from the carriage. It unfurled into around a dozen thinner ropes and wrapped around a woman each. As they screamed, they were quickly pulled into the carriage. All of the women caught were the most beautiful among the females present. The young master of the Mo family has come out looking for playthings again. Sigh, these women sure are unfortunate to end up in the hands of that young master. Who knows how many women the young master of the Mo family has dirted? All the women he has captured have never appeared again. Who knows what has happened to them? What can we do? The Mo family reigns supreme in the Blue River province. No one dares to offend the Mo family in the Blue River province. After all, the Mo family is the reason why the Blue River province is one of the 5 most powerful provinces in the divine kingdom of Qingyang. Quite a few passers-by discussed this matter on the sides of the street. Many of them pitied the women. No one stood forward against the young master of the Mo family for kidnapping people publicly. If they did that, they would only end up dead. My elder sister, let go of my sister. A child who seemed less than 10 years old ran out and charged towards the carriage. He was panic-stricken. You're looking to die, a cold voice rang out from the carriage. Without even making an appearance, a long whip emerged from the carriage, directly extending towards the child. The child had only just begun cultivating. He was not even an Earth Saint Master, so he would be dead for sure if the whip struck him. The eyes of the young man with a fan narrowed at the sight of this. With a clap, his fan was closed, and he directly extended his fan towards the whip from afar. Immediately, a powerful strand of origin energy shot out and knocked the whip aside. How dare you? Who is getting in this young master's way? Are you sick of living? An arrogant voice rang out from the carriage. The young man walked over under everyone's attention slowly. He tapped the fan in his hand as he smiled impolitely. You dare to call yourself a young master before this young master? You sure are bold. The one who's tired of living is you. You dare to talk back to this young master? Kill him. The young master of the Mo clan said from within the carriage. The guards around the carriage immediately surged up as they charged towards the young man aggressively. The corner of the young man's lips perked up disdainfully. He said, "How dare you disrespect this young master? You should die for harming innocent women in the eye of the public. You should die for attacking a young child. You should die." The young man spread his fingers and opened the fan in his hand, directly fanning it towards the carriage. Whoosh! Flames immediately rose up with the wave of the fan, surging towards the sky. Flames emerged from the fan, turning into a violent dragon of fire that enveloped the guards and carriage of the Mo family. The violent flames came and left quickly. It had vanished in just the blink of an eye. At that moment, all the guards and the carriage enveloped by the flames vanished. Only some ash was left behind on the ground. The street fell silent at that moment. Everyone became stunned. What kind of fire was this? It reduced the young master of the Mo family along with his carriage into ash in a single moment, while leaving the surrounding structures and people unscathed. Everyone's gaze towards the young man changed. This was definitely groundbreaking to kill the young master of the Mo family in the territory of the Mo family. After all, the Mo family was one of the 5 most powerful clans within the divine kingdom of Qingyang. They possessed an overgod and controlled an entire province. Thank you, Savior, thank you. The women he had saved all thanked the young man before fleeing with lingering fear. They disappeared into the crowd. Looks like the Mo family is not up to anything good either. Uncle Qin, let's go. Let's go wipe out the Mo family. The young man put his fan away and walked off indifferently. Young master, you've already wiped out 4 clans along the way. The strong prey on the weak. That is the law of the saints' world. If you have to stick your nose into every matter, you'll have to wipe out quite a few clans on the entire cloud plain. The man beside him said helplessly. If that's the case, let's leave this Mo family be for now. Uncle Qin, I heard that a god king's dwelling has appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. It seems to belong to someone called Duanmu or something. Let's go check it out. The young man became excited once again. Duanmu, the middle-aged man murmured to himself. A gleam of light flashed through his eyes and he nodded. Let's go and check it out. Chapter 1731. Overgods attacking the formations. Soon after the young man with a fan and the burly man referred to as Uncle Chin left, a powerful presence rapidly appeared. In the sky, over a dozen men in black clothes had appeared. They were emotionless and cold. The weakest of them were at reciprocity, while the leader had already reached deity from the presence and pressure he gave off. Who killed the young master of our Mo family? Chase him down, the deity said coldly. After learning about the direction which the young man had left in, he pursued with lightning speed. At the same time, a powerful presence surged into the sky from the estate of the Mo family. It surged out like an arrow, and the pressure it possessed actually came from a god. With the appearance of the god, a tremendous voice boomed through the sky. Who has come to our Mo family and looks down on us? There was rage within the voice, and the person shot off towards the young man like a sword. Heavens, a god of the Mo family has appeared. It's enough to draw out a god of the Mo family. The senior who killed the young master of the Mo family earlier was probably a god. Gods are great existences. It's extremely difficult to see one normally. I never thought I was actually standing beside a god. Heated discussions appeared in the bustling street. Many people felt sorry for the young man with a fan. The Mo family basically controlled the entire provincial city. Even if the young man were a god, he would not be able to escape from the Mo family. What very few people noticed was that the god from the Mo family actually did not return. Moreover, the god never appeared in the Mo family ever again. More and more godhood experts gathered at the entrance of God King Duanmu's dwelling. Not only were over 80% of all the gods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian present, but the number of overgods constantly increased. Aside from the 5 ancestors of the 5 provincial cities, even the overgods from the royal city had come. By now, there were more than 10 overgods gathered. All the overgods had gathered at the entrance. They tried any idea they could think of to open up the dwelling, but no matter what they tried, nothing worked. Even the overgod Feng Buell, who had studied formations a little in the past, was pushed to his wits' end. Looks like the ancestor of the Mo family from the divine kingdom of Qingyang has come. Even people of the divine kingdom of Qingyang have come. He seems like the ancestor of the divine sect of sun transformation from the divine kingdom of Qingyang. The ancestor of the windless school from the divine kingdom of Qingyang has come as well. Overgods from the divine kingdom of 9 stars have come as well. Look, he's from the divine kingdom of Kaiyuan. As time went on, the number of overgods present only increased. Every single one of them was senior members of a divine kingdom, great figures who dominated entire regions. Their whereabouts would normally always be unknown, but they had all gathered in the divine kingdom of Pingtian today after receiving news of God King Duanmu's dwelling. The divine kingdom of Pingtian, the divine kingdom of Qingyang, the divine kingdom of 9 stars, and the divine kingdom of Kaiyuan all possessed roughly the same strength. Basically, every single divine kingdom possessed over a dozen overgods. Even though not all of them had gathered here, there were already over 30 overgods. There were even more gods. This is within our divine kingdom of Pingtian. God King Duanmu's dwelling belongs to our divine kingdom of Pingtian, so please leave if you are not part of the divine kingdom. The overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian were obviously displeased with the arrival of so many foreign overgods. One of them immediately spoke out righteously. Hee, that's true. It is in your divine kingdom of Pingtian. But who said that people from other divine kingdoms can't come here? Moreover, God King Duanmu's dwelling doesn't belong to your divine kingdom. According to my knowledge, your divine kingdom hadn't even been founded when God King Duanmu was at the peak of his fame. A black-robed old man sneered. He possessed an icy cold presence. He was the overgod from the Mo family of the divine kingdom of Qingyang. That's right. God King Duanmu's dwelling doesn't belong to your divine kingdom of Pingtian. The God King himself did not belong to the kingdom, so you're all dreaming if your divine kingdom of Pingtian plans to take it for themselves, added another overgod. He came from the divine kingdom of 9 stars. People of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, consider it. If you want to take God King Duanmu's dwelling for yourselves, we'll all become your enemies. Can you really afford to pick a fight like this? A beauty in a white dress said. She came from the divine kingdom of Kaiyuan. The overgod from the divine kingdom of Pingtian was met with the forceful rebuke from overgods of the 3 other divine kingdoms as soon as he spoke out, immediately causing his face to become rather ugly. He did not wish for the overgods of other divine kingdoms to enter the dwelling because the competition would become more intense with more people. Their chances of obtaining anything good would naturally decrease. However, they just happened to be unable to do anything. The divine kingdom of Pingtian was unable to hold back 3 other divine kingdoms that possessed similar power. Cut the bullshit. It doesn't matter how many overgods gather here, if we can't even get through the main entrance. Let's think about a way in instead, said Feng Buell. Looks like the entrance to the dwelling is hidden in space. Everyone, why don't we work together and force out the formation hidden in space first, said the ancestor of the Mo family. Everyone immediately agreed to the suggestion. They all began to move, using their own techniques in an attempt to force out the entrance hidden in space. Immediately, violent booms rang out constantly. Terrifying ripples of energy permeated the surrounding space. It really did seem like the end of the world. The entire mountain range was flattened in a single instance. The shockwaves of energy when the overgods struck out was not something that the gods could endure, especially when so many overgods struck out together. It forced back all the gods in the surroundings. God damn it. It's all because of the damned Emo clan and Ando clan. The gods of the Wainer clan watched on in the distance enviously. Their jealousy had reached the point where they wanted to roar out. God King Duanmu's dwelling was so well hidden, and so hard to enter where even so many overgods were obstructed from entry. If they were inside in the dwelling, they would be able to enjoy the items left behind by the God King comfortably. Whenever they thought about that, the gods of the Wainer clan would be filled with jealousy and hatred to the point where they heaved heavily, and their eyes became bloodshot. Chapter 1732. The second strand of profound sword chi over 30 overgods struck out at the same time. The shockwaves of energy formed terrifying storms. Only other overgods could keep their footing within the storms. Gods had already retreated to several hundred kilometers away. Even at such a distance, there were still many gods who had to use all their power to remain where they were. However, there were 2 exceptions in the space there. One was a handsome young man in white clothes. He held a fan and smiled impudently. He stared at the overgods who attacked the formations in interest. The young man was clearly only a god, yet he remained as stable as a mountain in the storms of energy caused by the overgods' attacks. The powerful ripples failed to even touch his hair. Upon closer inspection, it was quite obvious that the ripples of energy could not even get within 3 meters of the young man. Behind the young man stood a burly man. He seemed extremely ordinary, just like a mortal. However, he was able to hover in the air, and the ripples of energy were unable to get within 3 meters of the man as well. In that region of space, only where the young man and burly man stood was peaceful. The other places were like a surging ocean. Their existence naturally attracted the attention of all the overgods present. They directly looked past the young man, and saw the burly man behind him. All their eyes narrowed. This was because they could not tell the cultivation level of the man. He seemed just like an ordinary person who had never cultivated before. However, they did not look down on him. Instead, they became fearful, paying particular attention towards the 2 of them. Although they knew that the man had used a secret technique to keep his strength hidden, he was able to stand there, which meant that his strength was extraordinary. However, what the young man did next made the complexions of all the overgods darken slightly. The young man actually pulled out a table several thousand meters in the air. The table was filled with various delicacies. The young man sat before the table. He began eating as he watched them attack the entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling. He was enjoying himself. On the other hand, the burly man stood beside the young man quietly like a guard. Uncle Chin, how long do you think they'll take before they get through to the entrance of the dwelling? The young man asked with some interest as he smiled indifferently. Duanmu has achieved some mastery over the laws of space. It really is difficult to find the entrance of his dwelling since he hid it in space. However, they already know its precise location now. It'll be difficult to say how long they'll take to open the dwelling. If it's just forcing out the entrance, it's much easier. All you have to do is destabilize the space there, and the entrance will naturally appear, replied the burly man referred to as Uncle Chin. Uncle Chin, why don't we have a gamble? Let's gamble how much time it'll take for them to force out the entrance. I'm gonna bet that they can't do it even with 3 years' time. The young man said to the burly man as he enjoyed his delicacies leisurely. I refuse. The middle-aged man turned him down flatly. You're boring. The young man shook his head and he immediately became less interested. Although the overgods did not hear the conversation, they gained a rough understanding of it through lip reading, and what they gathered made all of their faces sink slightly. Who are those two? I don't know. I've never seen them before or even heard of them. But seeing how they can remain in the area affected by energy, they're probably overgods. The young man is only a mid-god, and he isn't using any power at all. The ripples of energy aren't stopped by him. Looks like it's the person behind him. A few of the overgods communicated with each other secretly. Without any doubt, the scornful actions of the young man had annoyed all the overgods present. They would not have minded it if he just wanted to watch. There were many others that were watching, and there were many more gods in the distance. However, he just had to take out a table of delicacies as well. That completely changed everything. He was not observing or learning. He was watching a show. Although they felt indignant, the overgods did not dare to cause trouble. They could already tell that the powerful man was only an attendant or a guard. They could not afford to provoke an organization who even had overgods as guards. Even if he was not an overgod but a late god, they still could not afford to provoke an organization that used late gods as guards. The young man spread his fingers, and his fan immediately opened up, perhaps due to the fact that he sensed that more and more overgods were directing their attention over to him. He said with a smile, You don't need to look at me. I've just come out to enjoy myself, not to get in your way. Continue. Continue. The young man remained calm and composed before so many overgods. However, his behavior had confirmed what the overgods were doubting even more. Ignore him. Let's keep going, an overgod said with a sunken face. All of them could tell that the young man had quite an impressive background. The overgods continued to try to force out the entrance of the dwelling, and booms constantly rang out. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had come and gone. 4 formation discs shone with dazzling light inside God King Duanmu's dwelling, guarding a particular region of space. They were extremely eye-catching in the dwelling. Within the regions enveloped was the space where Shenjian, Jianchun and Moling, and Andofu cultivated. Unknowingly, they had already remained there for 5 years. At this moment, a powerful sword chi suddenly appeared within Jianchen's space. The formation disc that could withstand several attacks from gods collapsed and shattered in a split second. Even the formation disc itself was reduced to fragments, revealing Jianchen. A finger-sized sword chi hovered above Jianchen's head. It shone with pressing cold light, and just the sword intent it radiated with shattered the formation disc. As the sword intent continued to spread, even the formation's discs that guarded Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and Shen Jian began to tremble violently. The formations collapsed at a visible rate, alarming Shen Jian, Mo Ling and Ando Fu. In the next moment, the sword intent vanished. The tiny sword chi above Jianchen's head had been stored into Jianchen's soul, erasing all the sharp light. Jianchen opened his eyes slowly and smiled. The second strand of profound sword chi had finally been condensed. Since he already had prior experience, he used even less time to condense the second strand. Chapter 1733. Venturing into the dwelling, what powerful sword intent. It even made me shiver in fear. Brother Jianchen, you've broken through again. Mo Ling arrived before Jianchen and said in shock. Jianchen's strength increased just too quickly. It had increased once again in this short amount of time. Ando Fu put his formation disc away and stood up. He also stared at Jianchen in shock. Xinjian also stopped cultivating. He opened his eyes and gazed at Jianchen. Jianchen shook his head in response to Mo Ling. I've only increased my understanding of a sword technique. My personal strength has not broken through. Soon afterwards, Jianchen looked towards Xinjian. He discovered that Xinjian had actually become a god. Jianchen was not surprised at all by how quickly Xinjian had become a god. After all, his comprehension of the laws of the world had already reached mid-god. He only lacked personal cultivation. Jianchen had basically left all the divine crystals and pills on him to Xinjian when he entered seclusion. So with Xinjian's talent, becoming a god in 5 years was no problem. However, Xinjian had also used up all the divine crystals after breaking through to god. There was only an insignificant amount left for recovering origin energy. After all, it was impossible to replenish origin energy through the standard method of absorbing the energy in the surroundings here. Once someone ran out of origin energy, they would have to use divine crystals, pills, or recovery heavenly resources to replenish it all. However, Shi Yu and the other elders of the Mo clan were unable to calmly accept the fact that Xinjian had become a god so quickly. They had personally witnessed Xinjian attain godhood from reciprocity, yet he had already risen up to god in just a few years. He was like a rocket, stunning them all with his speed. If they had not personally witnessed this, they would have never believed someone could cultivate so quickly no matter what they heard. In particular, Shi Yu became filled with extremely mixed feelings. Originally, she had been labeled as a deviant with her talent, but now she realized that she was nothing when she compared herself to Xinjian. Since everyone is ready, let's venture into the dwelling, Jianchen said to everyone before looking around. He found a set of formations that was stood out, and directly sent a strand of sword chi towards it with the flying snow sword. There was an immediately boom, which was rather obvious in the quiet dwelling. Jianchen put his sword away after sending out the sword chi. He remained where he was as he waited. Seeing how Jianchen did not go anywhere, Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the deity elders did not move by themselves. They basically all followed Jianchen's lead now. Before long, the illusionary fairy Hao Yu flew over from the depths of the dwelling. She arrived before Jianchen after a while. Fairy Hao Yu, your soul has become even more powerful. Congratulations, said Jianchen. Fairy Hao Yu's soul was now as strong as a deity's. Her soul was only at the origin realm 5 years ago. Fairy Hao Yu ignored his words. She said, I've gained a basic understanding of this dwelling. The dwelling where Duanmu cultivated is in the very depths, and the formations there are the most powerful. I can't get through them either. There are 3 other regions besides that. They're probably where the 3 disciples of Duanmu cultivated. The formations are weaker there as well. Besides that, there are other formations hidden in the depths of the dwelling. Even overgods will be doomed if they fall into some of the killing formations, while god kings will struggle to break free. As a result, you must be careful as you move through the dwelling. Any carelessness will doom you. Fairy Hao Yu's appearance startled Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the others. They could tell just how weak Fairy Hao Yu was with a single glance. Yet she was able to move around the dwelling freely, and even understand so much. She had basically moved through the entire dwelling, so they could not help but hold her in high esteem. Fairy Hao Yu, may I ask if you've seen any other people in the dwelling? Mo Ling asked nervously. He did not recognize Fairy Hao Yu, so he just copied how Jianchen had referred to her. Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Mo Ling and said, You're asking about the ancestors of your 3 clans, right? I did indeed see them. It's all because they smashed through so many formations that I could venture so far in. Are the ancestors still alive? Mo Ling asked with great interest. Ando Fu became interested as well. His gaze was fixated on Fairy Hao Yu, and it was also filled with the same eagerness. They're dead. Their corpses are all in the depths of the dwelling. They died to a killing formation, replied Fairy Hao Yu. Mo Ling and Ando Fu immediately became rather sorrowful when they heard that. Although they had already expected this, they could not help but experience some sorrow once their doubts were confirmed. 2 of the 3 dwellings for God King Duanmu's disciples have been opened up, and they've been cleaned out. Only one remains. I'll take you there, Fairy Haoyu said to Jianchen and Xinjian before leading them into the depths of the dwelling. Very soon, Jianchen and the others arrived at where the third disciple of God King Duanmu cultivated without any obstructions. Jianchen discovered a large number of destroyed formations along the way. Every single one of them seemed ancient, clearly left behind by the ancestors of the three clans in the past. It was exactly because so many formations had been destroyed that Jianchen's group was able to move through the dwelling so smoothly. They basically encountered no obstacles at all. According to the ancestor, only this is the place where God King Duanmu's disciple cultivated. The disciple was an overgod and possessed quite impressive achievements in formations. The ancestors had tried to remove these formations in the past, but due to their power, the ancestors would have to devote a tremendous effort to remove them. They were unwilling to devote so much time and energy into doing that, so they never bothered with this place because the items of an overgod were not enough to draw in the ancestors. The other two dwellings were presumably where the grand disciples of God King Duanmu cultivated according to the ancestors. As the two other grand disciples were only gods, the formations were not powerful, so the ancestors managed to remove all the formations without any difficulty at all. Everything inside has already been taken away by our three clans, Mo Ling explained as he stood before the dwelling. Although they're grand disciples of God King Duanmu, they're much more powerful than Mo Ling and me. There are traces of their cultivation in their dwellings as well as marks for comprehending laws. Comprehending these marks are beneficial to me and Mo Ling, and even better for deities. Of course, that would depend on your personal affinity. If you don't have the affinity, you won't benefit at all, added Andofu before glancing at the elders of his Ando clan. He really wanted them to go to the dwellings of the grand disciples to cultivate. Let's get through these formations first. An overgod cast down these formations, and they are extremely well designed. Even early overgods would not be able to get through them if they did not understand formations. They're as tough as a steel wall to you lot, but I've found the weakest point in the formations. As long as you all pour your strength together, you might be able to smash through the formation with my assistance, said Fairy Haoyu. A gleam of light immediately flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. There was an overgod's treasure in there, and it belonged to a disciple of God King Duanmu. It would contain far greater wealth than the abode of any regular overgod. Chapter 1734. An overgod's dwelling. The weakest point of the formation is not fixed. It'll move around as the formation operates, so all of you get ready and listen to me, said Fairy Haoyu. Jianchen, Xinjian, Andofu and Mo Ling, and the deities all prepared themselves. They all stood in position, discreetly charging up power to launch their strongest attack at any time. Jianchen and Xinjian both radiated with powerful sword intent. Standing there, they seemed to have become two divine swords of shocking power. Sword intent permeated the region, contaminating the air, and causing it to sharpen. Both of them understood that they were facing against a formation an overgod cast down. The formation was so powerful that even regular overgods would struggle to break through it, let alone them, who were mere gods. As a result, they all needed to use their full strength this time. 3 meters left of the wall. Strike out now. Fairy Haoyu called out coldly. With that, everyone launched their most powerful attacks simultaneously towards the location Fairy Haoyu specified. There were 2 resplendent streaks of light among the attacks that illuminated the entire dwelling, completely outshining the light from Mo Ling and Andofu's attacks. Boom! The attacks from Jianchen, Xinjian, Andofu and Mo Ling, and the elders of both clans basically struck the place Fairy Haoyu mentioned at the same time. With a huge boom, a powerful wave of energy splayed backwards, pushing the elders all into a constant retreat. They struggled to maintain a stable footing while facing the violent energy. The formation immediately began to shine. Jianchen, Xinjian, and the others were all fixated on the formation. However, to their disappointment, the formation stabilized after only shaking a few times after taking on their attacks. Your attacks are too weak. If this is all you have, you won't even be able to obtain what Duanmu's disciple has left behind, let alone reach where Duanmu cultivated, Fairy Haoyu said with a frown. Try again but with battle skills. All deities stand in formation, said Jianchen. All the deities of the Mo clan and the Ando clan stood in formation, while Mo Ling and Ando Fu prepared their battle skills. 3 inches to the left. Do it. Fairy How You called out. Dao Yuo sword. A will that splits the heavens. The sword shakes and stars shatter. Jianchen and Xinjian immediately struck out with their strongest sword technique. Mo Ling and Ando Fu also used their truth tier battle skills while the deities of both clans launched their most powerful attack together. Boom. The attack was clearly much more powerful than the previous one. The formation immediately began to shake as its light flickered rapidly. However, the formation remained undamaged after taking on the attacks from so many people. Fairy How You shook her head gently. She sighed. That's only equivalent to an attack from a peak god. It's still far from over god. The reason why the attack had reached the level of peak gods was mostly because of Jianchen and Xinjian. Even when using truth tier battle skills, the attacks of Mo Ling and Ando Fu could only reach mid-god at most. As for the deities, even when they poured their strength together through their formations, the effects were negligible. It was basically non-existent. And it was only slightly better than not being there at all. Come again. Jianchen said coldly. With that, a terrifyingly powerful sword intent permeated the surroundings. A finger-sized strand of sword chi had appeared above Jianchen's head. The eyes of both Mo Ling and Ando Fu narrowed as shock filled their faces. The appearance of the sword chi sent chills down their back. They felt like they had arrived in a cavern of ice, where even their hands and feet felt numb. It was terrifying. Just far too terrifying. When Mo Ling and Ando Fu sensed the sword chi that had appeared, they both could not help but feel a sliver of fear inside. Xinjian's eyes had narrowed as well. He gazed at the tiny sword chi above Jianchen's head. This was the second time he had seen Jianchen use this sword chi, except it was far more powerful than the first time this time around. Let alone early gods, but even mid-gods would become stricken with fear before this sword chi. It could even claim the lives of late gods. The sword chi was simply too powerful. Fairy How You could not help but glance at Jianchen. A smear of anticipation appeared in her eyes, and she said, right in the center. Attack now. Everyone launched their attacks again. They used their strongest battle skills and sword techniques, while the profound sword chi hovering above Jianchen shot out as a streak of white light as well. Boom. This time, the formation finally wavered. It began to shake violently as its light began to flicker. However, it was still not close enough to shatter it. Jianchen's face turned cold at the sight of this. With a thought, another tiny strand of sword chi appeared over his head. It radiated with great power. The second strand of sword chi was even more powerful than the first. Swish. Before the formation had stabilized, the second strand of sword chi turned into a streak of resplendent light, striking the trembling formation with lightning speed. With a boom, the formation finally cracked after receiving Jianchen's 2 strands of profound sword chi despite the fact that even regular gods would struggle to get past it. It had shattered. We're through. We're through. We're through the formation. Mo Ling and Ando Fu were both overjoyed. They were extremely excited. They had been yearning for this dwelling since long ago. They had come here many times with their ancestors in the past. It was nothing difficult with their ancestors' strength as over-gods to overcome this formation. It would just take a tremendous effort. However, as the ancestors were unwilling to spend the effort on a dwelling that did not interest them, the formation always remained. They devoted their efforts towards God King Duanmu's legacy instead. As a result, the dwelling that was extremely enticing to them had only been opened up today. The elders of the 2 clans became emotional as well. However, the greatest contributor, Jianchen, had instead paled. He became haggard and he seemed weak. He had expended far too much energy using the profound sword chi. He could endure using a single strand of profound sword chi at the great perfection of sword origin, but using them consecutively had sapped away all the power of his soul. Chapter 1735. The pill room. Even though Mo Ling and Ando Fu were extremely excited and burned with the desire to enter, They did not set foot into the dwelling. Instead, they both looked at Jianchen. If Jianchen did not dare to enter, the two of them would not be bold enough to enter either. Now that Jianchen's strength had been gradually revealed, Ando Fu was not the only one who became extremely fearful of him. Even Mo Ling was unable to talk to him as casually as he did in the past. Jianchen sucked in a deep breath. He endured the dizziness he felt as he carefully made his way into the dwelling. The Overgod's dwelling was expansive and simple. There was a huge round square. There were several buildings littered around the square, labeled with Pill Room, Pill Refinery, Cultivation Room, Sword Comprehension Building and Scrolls Pavilion. Jianchen and Shenjian both looked towards the Sword Comprehension Building, while Mo Ling and Ando Fu looked between the Pill Room and the Scrolls Pavilion. As for Fairy Haoyu, she only glanced past these places before losing interest. She did not believe that there would be the items that would assist her in rebuilding her body here. Shenjian looked away from the Sword Comprehension Building very soon, directing his gaze towards the Pill Room. He said to Jianchen, "Let's go into the Pill Room and have a look first." "Sure." Jianchen nodded before making his way over to the Pill Room with Shenjian. Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the other followed behind them closely. None of them moved by themselves. The Pill Room was also protected by formations, but it was nowhere near as powerful as the one at the entrance. It was only at the level of gods, forming a basic defense. It was obviously not enough to stop them, so they smashed through the formations with ease. The heavy fragrance of pills immediately surged up when they entered the Pill Room. The small room was filled with over 100 jade bottles. They were stored away neatly, creating quite a pleasing sight. Each bottle possessed a label for the pill it stored. Consolidation pills. It's a relatively common pill, with its greatest effect being consolidating your foundation. It has quite a good effect on people with unstable foundations. It can also replenish the vital energies of people slightly. Of course, if the condition is too severe, the pill will be useless. You'll need pills of higher grades. Soul-clearing pills. It's a type of pill that stabilizes the soul, and has an impressive effect on those with unstable souls. Apart from that, it can be ingested by people who are unable to restrain themselves and might end up suffering from qi deviation to lower the risk. Mo Ling and Ando Fu had both lived for a very long time, so they were obviously rather knowledgeable. They had seen most of the pills in the room, so they began to introduce them. These are renewal pills. There are actually renewal pills here. Suddenly, Mo Ling's face changed and immediately became filled with surprise and joy. He immediately grabbed a jade bottle and examined it carefully. He said excitedly, "These renewal pills have reached the 5th grade of the truth tier. Every single one of them is priceless. They can go for 1,000,000 low-grade divine crystals each, or even higher sometimes. They can only be bought in the royal city of the Divine Kingdom. You can't find them in the provinces." Ando Fu also rushed over and said excitedly, "They really are renewal pills. Renewal pills specialize in recovering origin energy. Every single one of them is priceless, but there's a reason why they're priceless because they're extremely powerful. Even late gods can replenish all their expended origin energy within half a minute of consuming a renewal pill. At crucial times, renewal pills can save lives." "What? Even late gods can replenish all their origin energy within half a minute?" Jianchen was also surprised when he heard of the effects. He immediately rushed over. Mo Ling immediately passed the jade bottle to Jianchen. Jianchen did not hold back, directly accepting it and opening its lid. He saw 10 pure white and perfectly round pills sitting in there. Each one was the size of a thumb. Jianchen closed the bottle. Then he searched through the shelves and found that there were actually 6 bottles of the pills in total. Each bottle held 10 pills, resulting in 60 pills in total. In the end, they all came to an agreement for Jianchen and Shenjian to each take 2 bottles of the renewal pills each, while Mo Ling and Ando Fu each took 1. Originally, Mo Ling and Ando Fu had refused to take an entire bottle, only asking for 1 or 2 of the pills. After all, it was mainly because of Jianchen that they could even make it in here. Mo Ling and Ando Fu even suspected that Jianchen probably could smash through the formation by himself with his 2 strands of profound sword qi even without their help. However, Mo Ling and Ando Fu each took a single bottle in the end after Jian Chen's insistence. Ando Fu's feelings became extremely mixed as he held the bottle of pills. Originally, he believed that he was only Jian Chen's hostage. Even after coming into the God King's dwelling, he was only a tool to open a path. He would not have a share of whatever they found in here. However, he never expected Jian Chen to treat him just like Mo Ling, without any discrimination at all. He had even given him a whole bottle of the precious renewal pills without any hesitation. Revival pills. These are great for healing, having reached the 7th grade of the truth tier. A single pill can go for 1.5 million low-grade divine crystals in the royal city. There are actually 2 bottles here. Firecloud pills. These are pills that can temporarily strengthen of the person who ingests it. It can forcefully raise their cultivation by a minor level, ignoring the restrictions of the laws of the world. However, they'll suffer an extremely intense backlash as well, and become greatly weakened. 1000-year God Origin pills. Each bottle has 10 pills, and there are actually 4 bottles here. Heavens, these are 10,000-year God Origin pills. They're even more valuable than the renewal pills. Just the 10,000-year God Origin pill in the royal city fetches for a price of 10 million low-grade divine crystals. Ando Fu's shocked voice rang out in Jian Chen's ears. Jian Chen beamed when he heard that there were 10,000-year God Origin pills. He arrived before Ando Fu in flash and snatched the bottle from his hands. He opened its lid eagerly. There were also 10 pills inside. Quick, help me have it. Look how many bottles of 10,000-year God Origin pills there are. Jian Chen said eagerly. These pills were exactly what he needed. Brother Jian Chen, there's another bottle here. It's also the last bottle. There are only 2 bottles in here. Mo Ling passed a jade bottle to Jian Chen. To no surprise, there were also 10,000-year God Origin pills in there. 2 bottles. That's 20 pills. Jian Chen clenched the 2 bottles. He felt extremely joyful as he ignored the intense dizziness in his head. 20 10,000-year God Origin pills were equivalent to 200,000 years of cultivation. That could make his chaotic Naiden much larger. Even though the 20 pills were not necessarily enough for his chaotic body to advance to the 10th layer, it was enough for him to get 1 step closer to the 10th layer. It could even allow him to reach the peak of the 9th layer. At that time, all he needed to do was consume a few heavenly resources, or absorb a few divine crystals, and he would be able to reach the 10th layer successfully. He really is God King Duanmu's disciple after all. Just his pill room contains so many precious pills. His wealth has completely exceeded any other over God. Mo Ling and Ando Fu sighed in amazement. The disciple of God King Duanmu was much wealthier than their ancestors. Soul recovery pills. These are pills that specialize in recovering the power of the soul. Jian Chen, the power of your soul has been greatly consumed, so these pills should be useful to you. Shen Jian walked over with a white jade bottle. Chapter 1736. Soul recovery pills. What? There are actually soul recovery pills? Before Jian Chen could say anything, both Mo Ling and Ando Fu became astounded. They stared at the bottle in Shen Jian's hand in shock. Jian Chen's eyes lit up as well. He had expended a great deal of the power of his soul by using 2 strands of profound sword qi consecutively. He had to endure a sense of dizziness at all times. He was like an ordinary person who had not slept for several days, experiencing a horrible feeling. If the soul recovery pills could really recover the power of his soul, it would be extraordinary. Profound sword qi was Jian Chen's greatest weapon right now as well as his most powerful trump card to protect himself. However, he would basically drain all the power of his soul after using 2 strands of profound sword qi. Before the power of his soul had recovered, he had no more power to use another strand of profound sword qi. If the soul recovery pills could replenish the power of his soul quickly, it would drastically reduce the cooldown time for him to be able to use the profound sword qi again. I just wonder how effective the soul recovery pills are. If they can recover the power of my soul extremely quickly, they'll be of great use to me. They might even save my life, Jian Chen thought. Jian Chen accepted the jade bottle from Shen Jian, and to no surprise, there were 10 pills in there. Jianchen poured one of the perfectly round pills in the center of his palm without any hesitation. He studied it while eagerness flashed through his eyes. They really are soul recovery pills. They really are. It's exactly the same as the records have specified. It can't be wrong with this unique smell. I never thought we'd find a treasure like soul recovery pills in here. Ando Fu said joyfully. Ancestor, you were too careless. This is nothing close to a regular overgod's dwelling. The things in here are so valuable that they completely exceed what regular late overgods could possess. It even possesses pills that would be extremely beneficial to you. You shouldn't have given up on this dwelling in the past. Mo Ling said with regret and remorse. Jianchen became even more overjoyed after hearing the words of Mo Ling and Ando Fu. He studied the pill with much interest and murmured, "Looks like this soul recovery pill is pretty valuable." You don't understand, Brother Jianchen. Soul recovery pills aren't just valuable. They're priceless because only great pill masters can refine this type of pill, and the resources that go into refining one are priceless. In a rural place like our divine kingdom of Pingtian, there aren't any of these pills for sale at all. And even if they do appear for sale, they can't be purchased with low-grade divine crystals. You'll need high-grade or even supreme-grade divine crystals. Mo Ling explained to Jianchen. Soul recovery pills really are impressive. They are one of the few pills that can recover the power of the soul, and are even quite useful to God Kings. A single pill is basically worth around 100,000 high-grade divine crystals. I've heard that the most expensive type can reach up to 500,000 high-grade divine crystals, added Fairy Hao Yu. What? A single pill is worth 100,000 high-grade divine crystals? It's that valuable? Jianchen and Shenjian both leapt in fright when they heard that. 100,000 high-grade divine crystals were equivalent to 10 million mid-grade divine crystals. Jianchen's hand trembled for a moment. The pill was just too valuable. Even with his mental fortitude, he struggled to remain calm. All the wealth he had taken from the Liu family and the Ando clan did not even amount to a single pill. Jianchen immediately gave up on the thought of ingesting one of the pills. He placed the pill back into its bottle, without any hesitation. Eating a single soul recovery pill was equivalent to spending 10 billion mid-grade divine crystals, or a billion low-grade divine crystals. That was basically just wasting it. Thinking back to the past, he did not even have enough divine crystals to buy the flying snow sword in Maple Leaf City. Jianchen, I'd advise you to consume a pill immediately, so that you can recover your peak condition as soon as possible. There must be quite a few people gathered outside. Who knows when they'll enter, suggested Fairy Hao Yu. That's right. Right now's not the time to act sparingly. We can't waste too much time, Shenjian said as well. Jianchen hesitated slightly after listening to the two of them. In the end he made up his mind and consumed a pill. As soon as the soul recovery pill reached his stomach, Jianchen felt a cool presence rise up, directly into his soul. The power of his soul replenished rapidly, and in just a few seconds, he had recovered it all. At the same time, not all of the pill had been consumed after completely replenishing Jianchen's soul. It turned into a cool presence that was hidden within his soul. Once he consumed some of the power of his soul, it would be replenished immediately. What a wondrous pill! Jianchen could not help but sigh in amazement. A single soul recovery pill can even replenish all the power of an overgod's soul. You'll need several or even several dozen for a god king, said Fairy Hao Yu. The power of Jianchen's soul had not reached overgod yet, so a single pill was more than enough to replenish everything. However, as his strength increased, the power of his soul would grow as well. At that time, he would definitely use several of the pills if he wanted to recover the power of his soul completely. This was all because the amount of power a soul recovery pill could replenish was a set number. Afterwards, Jianchen gave Mo Ling and Ando Fu a single pill each, completely moving them. They were utterly ecstatic. Jianchen divided the remaining pills evenly between him and Shenjian. It's a fantastic pill, but it's a pity that there's only a single bottle. Jianchen sighed gently after putting the pills away. He felt slightly regretful. If only there were a few bottles more. Afterwards, Jianchen and the others found no other extraordinarily pills in the pill room. Most of them were just common types. In the end, they spent almost an hour to clear out all the bottles in the pill room. Aside from the 10,000-year God origin pills, Jianchen gave a portion of everything to Mo Ling and Ando Fu. Even the elders did not leave empty-handed. Jianchen, I will remember your kindness. If I get the chance, I will definitely return it, Ando Fu announced on the spot seriously. He had never seen such a great person in the world before. Under the situation where he was at a complete disadvantage in strength, Jianchen still split a lot of the precious pills with him despite Ando Fu technically being a hostage. If it was another person, Ando Fu was certain they would never give him any at all. They might have even killed him directly. Brother Jianchen is a true gentleman. It is my fortune to know someone like Brother Jianchen. Mo Ling sighed emotionally. If the Ando clan Lu family, or Mo Ling found the pills instead, they would probably immediately begin fighting over the pills. This was because the pills were just too precious. Even ignoring the priceless soul recovery pills that could not even be found in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, just the 10,000-year God origin pills were valuable enough, not to mention the other valuable pills that were present as well. Jianchen's group walked out of the pill room before entering the pill refinery, cultivation room, and scrolls pavilion. There was only an ancient pill cauldron within the pill refinery. It was of quite a high quality, so Jianchen obviously took it with him. The cultivation room was completely empty, without anything at all. The scrolls pavilion only possessed a few cultivation methods and battle skills, as well as the notes of the dwelling's owner in regards to cultivation. The notes came from a mere overgod. Jianchen glanced through them casually before giving them to Mo Ling and Ando Fu. In regards to the cultivation methods and battle skills, Jianchen let Mo Ling and Ando Fu pick one for themselves before taking the rest for himself. Although the cultivation methods and battle skills did not catch the eyes of Jianchen and Xinjian, they could be sold for quite a good price. In the end, Jianchen's group entered the Sword Comprehension Building. Chapter 1737. The Sword Comprehension Building. The Sword Comprehension Building was actually a stone hut with 2 floors. The stone walls were extremely smooth, and were like a polished mirror. They were flawless. However, Jianchen and Xinjian could tell with a single glance that a sharp and brutal sword intent had slowly ground flat all the walls. After the two of them entered the stone hut, they could not help but feel like they had entered a powerful sword. Soaring sword intent was present everywhere. This is at sword spirit. It's at sword spirit at the very least. Jianchen's heart shivered when he sensed the sword intent that was present everywhere. He felt a suffocating pressure in the stone hut. It was the pressure that came from the laws of the sword. He had already reached the great perfection of sword origin, so the only way he could feel pressured by the laws of the sword was from the realm beyond that, sword spirit. Suddenly Jianchen's eyes narrowed. There was an extremely sharp sword chi on the face of one of the walls. He could not help but shudder when he saw the sword chi. He seemed to feel the sword chi shoot out directly towards him. Jianchen felt like he was a tiny boat within a surging ocean before the sword chi, where he could be swallowed at any time. He felt as weak as an ant before the sword chi. Even though he had reached the great perfection of sword origin, he was still so weak. Jianchen stood as still as a mountain. His calm eyes exploded brightly at that moment as if 2 streaks of light had shot out from his eyes, directly colliding with the sword intent that radiated his way. He was a swordsman himself, and he possessed an extremely great talent for the way of the sword. How could he be defeated by the sword intent? Even when he knew he was not its opponent, Jianchen would never just sit around idly. He counterattacked fearlessly. Jianchen seemed to hear a rumble in his sea of consciousness under his full-powered resistance. Vaguely, he seemed to feel like he had broken through some sort of shackles, emptying his entire mind and soul. He had entered a wondrous state. Dazed, he seemed to see a hazy image. Within the image, a person in green robes stood within the hut with his back to Jianchen. He radiated with a supreme presence, which possessed sword intent that was so powerful that it even shocked Jianchen. The man slowly raised the sword in his hand. Immediately, surging sword chi emerged from the sword. He stabbed out casually. The strike seemed to follow a trajectory of the ways of the world. It contained the wonders of the laws of the world. The single strike contained devastating power. Jianchen felt the entire world clear up the moment the person stabbed out. The strike had completely filled his mind and soul, becoming the only thing in the world in his eyes. It absorbed his entire mind. He could even clearly sense all the minute changes in the strike. Jianchen could not help but close his eyes in the stone hut. His mind had already sunk into the wonders of the strike uncontrollably, comprehending it closely. He was comprehending the sword. Shen Jian had also closed his eyes, entering a state where he was no longer aware of himself. He went through the same thing as Jianchen. Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Jianchen and Shen Jian. At the same time, she said to Mo Ling and Ando Fu through a communication technique. You leave first. Don't disturb the two of them. Ando Fu and Mo Ling also glanced at the slash on the wall subconsciously. Unfortunately, they found nothing. Their eyes could not discern anything. The sword chi was clearly only for guiding people. It could not injure people, so only those who had also comprehended the laws of the sword could comprehend it. Mo Ling and Ando Fu did not walk the way of the sword, so the slash was obviously useless to them. Ando Fu and Mo Ling left the place silently. They planned to search through the final stone room. As they had no idea how long Jianchen and Shen Jian would take, the elders of the two clans all went to the dwellings of God King Duanmu's grand disciples to not waste their precious time in here. There were the marks for comprehending laws in there, and they just happened to be able to benefit from it as deities. I hope you can break through in the laws of the sword. The path ahead will be even tougher, and the formations will be even more powerful. Even if I can find the weak points, you can't break through it with your current strength. Only by becoming stronger can you advance to where Duanmu cultivates. Fairy Hao Yu murmured to herself as she stared at Jianchen and Shen Jian, who had entered selfless states of comprehension. She could only wait now. The formations leading towards God King Duanmu's residence were even tougher. If the formations were not destroyed, she would not be able to enter either. Whether they could make it to the depths would completely depend on Jianchen and Shen Jian. Suddenly, Fairy Hao Yu's eyes narrowed. She suddenly turned her head towards the entrance of the dwelling. The space there actually rippled slightly. Fairy Hao Yu frowned and said grimly, "Looks like the people outside will enter very soon. There's not much time left." Currently, a deafening boom had echoed outside God King Duanmu's dwelling. Several dozen overgods stood in a group as they destroyed formations around the entrance. Each formation was extremely powerful. They were enough to deal with or even kill overgods, so the destruction of several dozen of these formations created an astounding disturbance. It actually made the space there distort. Now, the number of overgods that had gathered before the entrance had increased to over 50, while the divine kingdoms that took part had increased from the initial 4 to 7. At the very front of them stood a sagely old man with gray hair. He held a formation disc that bore the 8 trigrams as he stared at the exploding formations. The overgods gathered there all treated the old man politely. They all behaved very modestly. This was because the old man was a famed formation master they had invited. Not only was he prestigious, but he was powerful as well, having reached late overgod. He was known as Master Chanlong. It was also this Master Chanlong who came up with the idea of casting down several powerful formations around the entrance of God King Duanmu's dwelling before exploding them. It formed a powerful attack that barraged the space there in an attempt to force out the entrance hidden. Just a little more. Do it again. This time, the entrance to the dwelling will definitely appear. Master Chanlong said leisurely while hovering in the air. Under the personal lead of Master Chanlong, the overgods who had studied some formations before all began to cast down the formations. A few days later, Master Chanlong had finally finished casting down all the formations with the efforts of several dozen overgods. This time there were over 100 formations, and every single one of them was at the level of overgods. Several thousand meters from there, the young man with a fan lay comfortably on a lounge. His eyes were closed as if he was sleeping. 2 beauties bent over beside him, carefully massaging his shoulders and legs. They worked extremely diligently. The 2 women were not weak. They were both deities. Let alone the Dong'an province. Deities were even powerful existences in the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian. Yet they could only afford to massage a young man who was only a god. Even overgods could not enjoy something like this because even in clans with overgods, deities possessed extraordinary statuses. They could never be used like servants. However, the two girls showed no unhappiness or reluctance at all. Instead, both of them were extremely joyful, as if massaging the young man was something they enjoyed very much. At this moment, the young man who seemed to be sleeping opened his eyes. He yawned lazily and glanced ahead sleepily. He said rather unhappily, "Why have they still not opened the dwelling up? Uncle Chin, how long have I been cultivating for?" "Young master, you've already been cultivating for 5 years," the burly man behind the young man replied. Chapter 1738. The entrance appears. The young man sat up slowly. He spread his fingers and opened the fan in his hands with a thwop. He gently fanned himself as he gazed at the several dozen overgods who had cast down formations under Master Chanlong's instructions. Interest immediately flooded his eyes again, and he said, "Uncle Chin, do you think they can force out the entrance this time?" The burly man shook his head gently. "Although it's not a bad idea, it's still a little too little to force out the entrance hidden in space." Duanmu comprehended the laws of the sword and the laws of space. He had basically reached the limits of God King with them, so it'll be difficult for these overgods to force out the entrance he hid. The young man stood up from the lounge lazily. He stretched a little before glancing at the two beautiful deities standing obediently to one side. He could not help but smile indifferently, and with a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared in his hand. The burly man glared at the young man when he saw the jade bottle, and the muscles on his face twitched unnaturally. The young man poured out 2 pills from the bottle, and the pills floated slowly towards the 2 women under an invisible force. The 2 women both looked at the pills excitedly. "I am a man of my word. Since you've served me for 5 years, I would never mistreat you. Here are 2 10,000-year god origin pills, 1 each," the young man said indifferently. He was extremely lavish. There was only a single 10,000-year god origin pill in the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian, and it had been brought over from another divine kingdom by the divine king. It was so expensive that it still had not been sold. Even though there were extremely great disadvantages to consuming 10,000-year god origin pills, there was a second reason why the pill had not been sold, which was its price. "Thank you, young master. Thank you." The 2 women thanked him. They were in especially good spirits. They carefully put the pill away like a treasure. "All right, you 2 can go. Go do whatever you have to do. I'll let you go early," the young man said as he fluttered his fan. The 2 women thanked him again, and no longer remained. They left happily. They had used just 5 years to obtain a precious 10,000-year god origin pill. It was just too worth it of a deal for them. They felt like the pills had basically fallen into their laps. "Young master, how come I don't remember when you obtained the 10,000-year god origin pills? And with your talent, the clan would never give you pills like that. Have you secretly snuck into Elder Gu's pill room?" Uncle Chin asked after the 2 women had left. The young man closed his fan in a single moment and glanced at Uncle Chin with guilt. He said, "Of course not. Uncle Chin, you're thinking too much. Not to mention that even you would struggle to enter Elder Gu's pill room, so how would I get in there, right? Then where did your 10,000-year god origin pills come from?" All right. Uncle Chin, let's not talk about the pills anymore. Aren't they just 10,000-year god origin pills? With my status, getting them is a piece of cake. The young man cut off Uncle Chin. Then he looked away and stared at the entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling. He said, "Even with so many people, they've still failed to make the entrance appear after 5 years. I don't have that much time to wait for them. Uncle Chin, go help them out. If they continue like this, they'll just be wasting my time." Uncle Chin glanced at the young man rather helplessly and nodded slightly. "Blow up the formations." It was also at this moment that Master Chanlong's voice rang out. Soon a series of thunderous booms followed. The formations cast down around the entrance had all been blown up, forming a powerful attack that ripped at the space there. The space immediately trembled gently. However, it was still a little lacking for the terrifying attack from the explosion of so many overgod-level formations to rip open the space there. It was also in the moment that the formations had been blown up that the Uncle Qin beside the young man moved. He only extended a finger towards the entrance gently. His action immediately created a series of ripples in the space before him silently. His movement seemed extremely ordinary, just like a mortal casually raising a finger. However, it managed to move the space there. However, everyone's attention was gathered on the dwelling at that time. No one had noticed Uncle Qin's actions. It was also with Uncle Qin's movement that the space around the entrance to the dwelling shook violently. Space seemed to rip open there, revealing a stone door hidden in space. The powerful attack from the explosion of several dozen formations struck the stone door, and failed to move it at all. The entrance has appeared. It's the entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling. Master Qianlong really is a master of formations after all. You really are impressive to have actually forced out the entrance of the dwelling. Master Qianlong, you have my admiration. The overgods nearby all praised Master Qianlong. Meanwhile, Master Qianlong smiled deeply with the 8 trigrams disc in one hand as he stroked his white beard with the other. His face was filled with confidence. The young man also smiled deeply when he saw this from afar. There's another powerful formation on the stone door. Master Qianlong, please assist us in getting through it. Master Qianlong, will all be depending on you. The surrounding overgods all asked Master Qianlong to continue breaking through the formations. They spoke even more politely than before. As long as the entrance has appeared, the formations will be much easier to deal with. Any formation cannot lose its source of energy. As long as you drain its source of energy, any formation will fall apart by itself no matter how powerful it is. Allow me to find the weakness of this formation, Master Qianlong said loudly. He arrived before the stone door with his chest held high as he stared at the door with much focus. The moment the entrance to the dwelling appeared, the space within the dwelling trembled gently as if it had received a powerful attack. Fairy, how you gazed in the direction of the entrance from outside the sword comprehension building. She became grim and murmured, the remaining time is only decreasing. Chapter 1739. Sword Spirit. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. A gleam of light suddenly flashed through the eyes of Master Qianlong, who had been devoting himself to studying the formation outside God King Duanmu's dwelling. He said, right here. Everyone attack here with your full strength. Without any hesitation, the several dozen overgods all struck out at the point of weakness specified by Master Qianlong. Even though it was a weak point, the formation was still one God King Duanmu personally cast down after all. Smashing through it as overgods was not an easy feat. The several dozen overgods barraged the point of weakness crazily for 10 days and nights straight. Only then was the formation destroyed. However, the stone gate remained closed. The light of formations continued to flicker outside. There was more than a single formation there. There are a total of 18 formations on this stone door. There's 17 left, so allow me to study and try to predict the features of this second formation. Master Qianlong swung his sleeves and continued to study the formation by squatting before it. This person is quite accomplished with formations. If this continues, the formations cast down by Duanmu will be destroyed sooner or later, Uncle Qin said calmly from afar. A year later, 8 of the 18 formations had been destroyed. Only 10 remained, blocking everyone from entering. At the same time, Xin Jian awakened from his state of comprehension within God King Duanmu's dwelling. With the period of comprehension, his way of the sword had reached the great perfection of sword origin. On the other hand, Jianqin remained in his state of comprehension, and had not roused. Xin Jian did not disturb Jianqin. He walked out of the stone hut silently. The longer a person spent comprehending, the more they would benefit. Jianqin's way of the sword had already reached the great perfection of sword origin before him. He had been comprehending for longer as well. So coupled with Jianqin's talent, Xin Jian realized that Jianqin was probably making a breakthrough with the way of the sword. Afterwards, Xin Jian sat down outside the building. Then he placed the Cloudstream sword on his knees and formed seals with his hands. He began to cultivate again. Without much delay, a mysterious power began to radiate from him. In the end, it gradually turned into translucent specks of light, flickering as they revolved around him. The glimmering specks of light seemed to form a star chart of the night sky. Shenjian was a huge giant who currently sat within a galaxy. His cultivation had reached the level of gods, so he had fulfilled the conditions required to grasp the second move of a will that splits the heavens. Although he had used the move in the battle against the evil spirit once in the past, he had paid a huge price to forcefully use it. Not only was its power reduced, but it did not possess the core essence of the move. He was nowhere near grasping the essence of the move back then. As a result, he needed to carefully comprehend the second move after becoming a god. This battle skill is of quite a high grade. Looks like Shenjian has also inherited the legacy of someone great, or it would be impossible for him to learn such a high-grade battle skill. At the same time, his sword is nowhere near as simple as it seems. Fairy How You stared at Shenjian from the distance and the light in her eyes flickered. Just like this, another half a year passed. Suddenly, a powerful sword intent appeared within the sword comprehension building. Sword chi currently revolved around Jianchen, who stood inside the stone hut. The sword chi were finger-sized and silver white, swimming around happily like little fishies. Compared to the sword chi Jianchen previously used, this sword chi was no longer as rigid. Instead, it seemed more intelligent, as if each strand of sword chi possessed its own life. Jianchen had finally made a breakthrough in his way of the sword after this period of comprehension, formally advancing to sword spirit. That's the comprehension of an over-god's laws of the world. Gleams of light flickered through Fairy How Yu's eyes when she sensed the disturbance in the building. She was quite surprised. Jianchen's comprehension of the laws of the world had already become equivalent to an over-god's now. Jianchen's affinity for comprehension even makes me a little jealous, Fairy How You said rather emotionally. Jianchen was still a cultivator at sainthood when she first met him on the Tianyuan continent. He had not even comprehended the laws of the world back then. Only so much time had passed since then. Yet he had made his way up, step by step, to an expert that was equivalent to an over-god now. The only aspect he lacked in was his personal cultivation. It was too low. The ninth layer of the chaotic body was only equivalent to a deity. Even with the entire saint's world in perspective, there was probably only Jianchen who possessed the cultivation of a deity and the comprehension of an over-god. This was because it was just too difficult for his chaotic body to progress to a new layer. He required tremendous amounts of cultivation resources. The sword chi in Jianchen's surroundings settled down very soon. However, he did not make his way out of the building. Instead, he directly went to the second floor. The second floor was extremely spacious as well. There was a stone table in the center with a scroll on it. Jianchen arrived before the stone table and looked around carefully. Only after confirming that there were no dangers did he pick up the scroll and slowly unfurl it. Jianchen's eyes suddenly narrowed the moment he unfurled the scroll. He felt like the scroll was enlarging right before his eyes, becoming boundless in the blink of an eye. It had transformed into a world with mountains and rivers, while he himself stood in a world like that. A green-robed, middle-aged man had appeared silently before him. The middle-aged man stood tall and straight. His appearance was dashing. He possessed sharp eyebrows that were as straight as swords and eyes that shone like stars. He radiated with surging sword intent. The sword intent was so powerful that even Jianchen, who had reached sword spirit, felt greatly pressured. God King Duanmu. Jianchen shuddered. Even though he had never seen the man before him before, he was extremely certain that the man was the owner of the dwelling, the supreme God King Duanmu. However, this was not God King Duanmu's true body. It was just an image he had left behind. God King Duanmu probably used this scroll to teach his disciple, thought Jianchen. At this moment, God King Duanmu began to use the sword in the empty space. His style of the sword was swift and brutal. Every single strike contained sharp sword chi. All the attacks were extremely terrifying. Whenever he stabbed out, the sword seemed to follow the natural trajectories of the world. It seemed to have fused with the world, possessing the power of laws. This was a scroll God King Duanmu left behind to pass on his ways. He had engraved all his comprehension of the laws of the sword into the scroll, passing it on selflessly. The person he wanted to pass it to was not Jianchen but his disciple. It was just that Jianchen had touched the disciple today, so he was brought into this illusionary world instead. Naturally, he was treated as God King Duanmu's disciple. After all, the scroll was only a scroll. It did not possess any consciousness. It was naturally unable to tell who was who. Jianchen remained in the illusionary world as he devoted all his attention to God King Duanmu's sword techniques. It seemed like his mind had sunken into it as he closely comprehended every single detail of God King Duanmu's usage of the laws of the sword. God King Duanmu's sword style doesn't only contain the way of the sword, but the laws of space as well. Jianchen realized something and became filled with admiration. Not only were God King Duanmu's accomplishments in the laws of the sword impressive, but his laws of space had reached an extremely profound level as well. Chapter 1740. A tight situation. Originally, I comprehended the laws of space as well, but they were ripped away from me by the sword spirits so that I could focus on the way of the sword. If I comprehended other ways while comprehending the way of the sword, it'll just waste my time and effort. It'll indefinitely delay when I can reach the highest realm of the way of the sword, Jianchen thought. He agreed to what the sword spirits had done very much. He really would be able to reach the highest realm of the way of the sword by devoting all his time to it. If he had to comprehend other ways while comprehending the way of the sword, it would waste quite a lot of time. Although a few supreme experts in both the saints' world and the immortals' world had grasped more than a single way, most of them would comprehend their first way to the absolute limit and reach the apex of the world first. After that, they would start comprehending other ways. Even if any accidents happened to them, they would be able to protect themselves. If a person began comprehending several ways right from the start, they would have to spend quite a lot of time and energy on each way. No matter how great their talent was, they would have to spend quite a long time before they managed to reach the apex. It was extremely likely for them to die during that time due to various reasons. There were quite a few prodigies who died before achieving great strength in both the immortals' world and the saints' world. I don't know the laws of space anymore, so I'll ignore God King Duanmu's laws of space. I'll just comprehend his way of the sword. Jianchen cleared his mind and began paying close attention. Jianchen completely lost his sense of time. When God King Duanmu finally stopped using the sword, his figure faded gradually and vanished in just a few seconds. Jianchen's mind also receded from the scroll. The scroll in his hand had closed up automatically. At the same time, he discovered that Shen Jian had arrived beside him at a certain time. This scroll will be of great use to us. You have a look. I need to go into seclusion immediately. Jianchen passed the scroll to Shen Jian before leaving the building to go to the cultivation room. Shen Jian's mind was also sucked into the scroll's world when he opened it like Jianchen. He experienced the same thing. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. Jianchen finally emerged, and when he did, he had completely digested all his comprehension from God King Duanmu's usage of the sword, which deepened his comprehension of the way of the sword some more. Even though he still remained at the minor achievement of sword spirit, he had taken a great step towards partial achievement without a doubt, and he was now closer than before. Shen Jian benefited greatly from the scroll as well. Although he remained at the great perfection of sword origin, he was even closer to sword spirit now. Of course, they could comprehend so much from the scroll God King Duanmu left behind completely because of their talent and aptitude for comprehension. The better they were at comprehending, the more they would benefit obviously. If a person with no special aptitude had obtained God King Duanmu's scroll instead, they would not benefit at all even if they glanced through it 1,000 times. Even if the most basic method of passing on ways was present before a person with bad aptitude, they would not be able to benefit from it at all. As soon as they emerged from the cultivation room, Jianchen frowned. He looked towards the entrance of the dwelling. That was where they had come in from, and it actually rumbled from that direction. You've sensed it as well. It's the people outside attacking the entrance. They'll enter before long. Fairy Hao Yu arrived before Jianchen and said sternly. Jianchen became stern as well. Although his strength had increased drastically after reaching sword spirit, He also understood that the people gathered outside would be a large group of overgods. Jianchen was able to achieve invincibility among those below overgod with his current strength, but he still stood no chance of victory against overgods. This was because all overgods had comprehended the same amount of the laws of the world as him at the very least. There were even a few overgods who had comprehended more than him. Jianchen possessed no advantage in the laws of the world before overgods. His personal cultivation was a huge disadvantage in the first place, so as soon as they began fighting he would definitely suffer defeat. A thought flashed through Jianchen's mind. Suddenly, he gritted his teeth, and with a flip of his hand, 2 jade bottles appeared from his space ring. They were labeled 10,000-year God Origin Pills. I can only consume these pills in the current situation. It's a pity that I only have 20 of these pills. I wonder if 20 will be enough for me to reach the 10th layer of the chaotic body, Jianchen said gruffly. He could only consume the pills sooner than he had initially planned now that he faced the threat of so many overgods. Only when he was even stronger could he protect himself before these overgods. Jianchen turned around and entered the cultivation room again to continue his seclusion. However, he did not comprehend the way of the sword this time. Instead, he ingested the pills to increase his personal strength. Jianchen sat in the gloomy room. He poured out a pill from the bottle and swallowed it without any hesitation. As soon as the pill reached his stomach, it turned into an extremely violent energy that exploded within Jianchen. Jianchen did not feel like he had consumed a pill but a bomb. The energy was so violent that if weaker people with more fragile bodies had consumed it instead, they probably would have been blown into pieces in an instant. However, Jianchen cultivated the chaotic body. Even if the effects of the pill were several times more brutal, he could still withstand it, as the toughness of the cultivator's body was one of the greatest advantages of the chaotic body. Jianchen directly ignored any future problems the pills could cause and devoured all 20 pills one by one. They wreaked havoc in his body as violent energy that was gradually refined into chaotic force. The chaotic Niden in his dantian grew bit by bit as well. Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the elders of both clans all gathered outside the cultivation room. Every single one of them was worried. The disturbances from the entrance were only increasing, where even they could sense it with their strength. All of them became uneasy. After all, they were the people who had entered the dwelling first. Once the overgods made it in here, they would definitely suspect that their group had obtained a lot of good things, so the overgods would never let them go. A month later, Jianchen consumed all 20 10,000-year God Origin pills. However, to his disappointment, they failed to allow him to break through to the 10th layer. Chapter 1741. Skeletons of Overgods. Jianchen left the cultivation room with a heavy heart. The amount of energy he required to go from the 9th layer to the 10th layer of the chaotic body was just too extravagant. 20 10,000-year God Origin pills were not enough. He estimated that he would require 80 of the pills at the very least. Although he still had a few of the heavenly resources he had found in the Xianhuang microcosm on him, he would not be able to reach the 10th layer even if he ingested all of them, as the remaining gap to the 10th layer was just too vast. He could not ingest too many of the heavenly resources, as his body would develop resistance, and their effects would be greatly reduced. If he was close to the 10th layer, he could consider ingesting them. Shen Jian, Ando Fu and Mo Ling, and the elders of the two clans had all gathered there already when Jianchen emerged from the room. The growing disturbances at the entrance of the dwelling had alarmed all of them. They were all extremely grim. The people outside will be entering very soon. We must proceed further into the dwelling, Shen Jian said grimly. God King Duanmu's dwelling was very large, but there was nowhere for people to hide. Once the people outside made their way in, they would definitely inspect every inch of the dwelling. Their group would not be able to hide from overgods. Brother Jianchen, we've collected everything in the stone room, whether they're useful or not. We've put them all away into a space ring. Aside from that, there are a few divine crystals in the room. They're all high-grade. Mo Ling handed a space ring to Jianchen. Jianchen checked through the space ring and found that it was filled with various random things. Most of them did not have any functional purpose at all, and was just decor that was pleasant to the eye. There were even gold and silver coins that only possessed value to people of the secular world. Naturally, Jianchen had no interest in those things, so after checking through it all quickly, he found the divine crystals Mo Ling had mentioned. There were not many divine crystals, only 3 pieces. However, each piece was frighteningly large, even stunning Jianchen. The standard size for a divine crystal was thumb-sized, 1 centimeter long, high and wide. However, the 3 divine crystals were all 1 meter cubes. Jianchen took out a divine crystal. He could not help but sigh in amazement as he stared at this large piece. The largest high-grade divine crystal he had seen before was only the size of a head. Yet the divine crystals before him had already exceeded that by several dozen times. This is a block of divine crystals. A block of divine crystals is 1 meter in length, width, and depth. If you break it up, a block of divine crystals is worth 1,000,000 of the standard divine crystals. Some deals involving large sums often use divine crystals like this. Fairy Haoyu's voice rang out. Mo Ling and Ofu, and the elders all looked at the block of divine crystals enviously. To them, just high-grade divine crystals were rather rare, let alone a piece so large. However, they understood that even though they coveted the divine crystal, they could only look and not touch it. It would not end up with them in the end. With our current level of cultivation, using high-grade divine crystals to cultivate is just too wasteful. I feel like we should wait till we get out and exchange all these high-grade divine crystals for mid-grade divine crystals. It'll be more beneficial for our cultivation, said Shenjian. High-grade divine crystals were commonly used by over-gods. Mid-grade divine crystals were more than enough for them, who were gods. Low-grade divine crystals were basically used by people below God. Their effects would become negligible to gods. Shenjian had consumed quite a number of low-grade divine crystals to become a god in the past. Even if all 3 blocks of high-grade divine crystals were given to him now, he would not be able to reach mid-god. As a result, it was better for them to keep the divine crystals and exchange them for mid-grade ones once they got out of here. A block of high-grade divine crystal was equivalent to 1,000,000 standard high-grade divine crystals. If they were exchanged for mid-grade divine crystals, a single block of high-grade divine crystals would be worth 100 million mid-grade divine crystals. On the other hand, 100 million mid-grade divine crystals were enough for Shenjian to become a mid-god. Since our strength won't increase even if we use up these 3 blocks of divine crystals, why not let them be for now? We can exchange them after we get out. Jianchen nodded and placed the blocks of divine crystal back into the space ring. Bang! At this moment, a heavy sound rang out from the entrance. The sound was even more intense than before, and the space at the entrance twisted violently as well. Looks like the people outside have smashed through another formation. We can't waste any more time. Let's leave immediately for the depths. Fairy Haoyu said grimly. The current situation was becoming more and more pressing. Everyone no longer hesitated and immediately set off. They advanced towards the very depths. That was where God King Duanmu cultivated. The formations became more and more powerful as they made their way towards where God King Duanmu cultivated. They had even gradually exceeded the level of Overgod and reached God King. Even though the 3 Overgods had destroyed the formations they came across along the way, the residual fragments still radiated with terrifying power, causing their hearts to beat constantly as they moved through. They were filled with anxiety as their vigilance had been raised to the absolute maximum. Very soon, Jianchen discovered 3 skeletons ahead. They were covered by a thin layer of dust, and it was clear that they had been dead for many years already. Ancestor! Mo Ling and Ando Fu could not help but quiver violently at the sight of the 3 skeletons. Both of them dropped to their knees as sorrow filled their faces. After so many years, this was the first time they had seen the remains of their ancestors. Although they had entered the dwelling in the past, they had not dared to venture too far and due to their limited strength. Jianchen also saw the 3 skeletons, and his feelings became mixed. After all, they had been 3 overgods in the past. They had expended tremendous effort to obtain God King Duanmu's jade, the key to God King Duanmu's dwelling, but in the end, They failed to benefit from it at all and died in the dwelling instead. That's a hidden killing formation. The three of them entered it accidentally, so they were slain. Let's make our way around it, said Fairy Hao Yu. She was at the very front of the group, guiding everyone through. Mo Ling and Ando Fu endured their sadness and bowed towards the remains from afar. Afterwards, they made their way around the place behind Jianchen. They both knew that their ancestors' skeletons had been trapped in the killing formation. They were unable to take the skeletons away, or even approach the place. After advancing a few hundred meters, everyone stopped once again. A formation blocked their way. This formation is extremely powerful. I don't know whether you can get through it. I'll find the weakness of the formation and all of you try attacking it with your full strength, said Fairy Hao Yu. She stared at the formation and studied it for a while before she suddenly extended her right hand. 3 inches to the southeast, attack. Chapter 1742. A gathering of overgods. Along with Fairy Hao Yu's voice, Jianchen and everyone else struck out with their full strength at the same time. The deities all stood in formation as they launched their most powerful attack. Ando Fu and Mo Ling forced out all the power they had, using their most powerful battle skills to attack the weakness of the formation. Stars glimmered around Xinjian as he stabbed out as hard as he could with the Cloudstream sword. A galaxy filled with shining stars appeared. A pure and powerful force surged out from the galaxy, embedded onto the Cloudstream sword. It shot out as a powerful strand of sword chi. Xinjian had used the second move of a will that splits the heavens that he had recently comprehended without any hesitation. The sword extends and galaxies extinguish. This time, it was clearly much more powerful than when he used it against the evil spirit. Even late gods would be doomed before his attack, unless they were prodigies as well. 2 finger-sized, silver-white sword chi appeared above Jianchen's head, and they surged with sword intent. With a thought, the 2 strands of profound sword chi shot out at the same time. They moved extremely fast as if they had exceeded the speed of lightning, striking the weak point Fairy Hao Yu had specified in a single instance. Everyone had basically launched their most powerful attacks at the same time. With a great boom, the terrifying shockwave of energy forced back Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the elders. In particular, all the elders spurted blood from their mouths as they paled. As Jianchen had used 2 strands of profound sword chi at the same time, the attack had reached the level of overgods. Just the shockwaves of energy had heavily wounded the deity elders, and it even forced Mo Ling and Ando Fu to constantly retreat. When the violent energies gradually dispersed, everyone's faces became extraordinarily ugly. They had used their most powerful attacks without holding back at all, and this even included their greatest trump cards. However, the formation remained intact. Sigh. Looks like this is our limit. Fairy Hao Yu sighed gently when she saw this. She was filled with frustration. Jianchen became rather dejected as well. The formations in the path to God King Duanmu's cultivation area was unimaginably powerful. Even after growing stronger in the dwelling, he was still far from being able to smash through the formations there. Boom. At this moment, the entire dwelling basically rumbled. Violent streams of energy appeared in the distance, causing all their faces to become extremely ugly again. Including Jianchen, everyone felt an intense pressure from the ripples of energy. Even late gods would probably fall before the shockwave. After all, this shockwave came from the attacks of several dozen overgods. It was so powerful that even overgods would have to avoid it. Afterwards, dense origin energy surged into the dwelling rapidly. The environment within the dwelling became the same as the outside world, and it was now filled with dense origin energy. The entrance has been smashed through, Jianchen said with much grimness. With a flick of his hand, a jade bottle appeared in his hand. He directly poured out a soul recovery pill from the bottle and ingested it, ignoring how reluctant he was to use it. He recovered his consumed power of the soul. He would be facing many overgods soon, so he had to return to his peak condition. Enter the bright moon divine hall, Fairy Hao Yu said grimly. Afterwards, her illusionary figure suddenly disappeared, having entered the divine hall. She controlled the divine hall to fly out of Jian Chen's space ring, falling onto the ground as a grand hall. The divine hall's entrance was wide open. If you don't want to die, come in. Remember, everyone must seal up their cultivation inside my divine hall. Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out from the divine hall. Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the elders all understood that the bright moon divine hall was fragile. None of them had any objections, and they sealed off their cultivations and erased their presences before entering the divine hall quickly. Shenjian, you should go in as well. The people coming in are all over gods, Jianchen said when he saw Shenjian hesitate. Shenjian was an early god, while his comprehension of the way of the sword had reached late god. He was still extremely far off when compared to overgods. Shenjian clearly understood this. After a moment of hesitation, he told Jianchen to be careful before entering the divine hall as well. Once everyone entered the structure, the bright moon divine hall shrank rapidly before returning to Jianchen's space ring. In the blink of an eye, only Jianchen remained within God King Duanmu's dwelling. The dwelling was very large, but there were no places to hide. It was impossible for them to escape from the overgod's searches. As a result, Jianchen did not hide. Instead, he sat down where he was and waited for the people to come in. The power of his soul that he had drained from using the 2 strands of profound sword qi rapidly recovered under the assistance of the soul recovery pill. A few seconds later, tremendous presences appeared at the entrance of the dwelling. The overgods outside had all entered the dwelling. Several dozen powerful senses of the soul swept through the dwelling recklessly, before all gathering on Jianchen. There's actually someone inside? I heard that people entered the dwelling several years ago. Is he it? A few voices of surprise and doubt rang out from the entrance. The overgods gathered at the entrance all flew towards Jianchen. Overgods moved extremely fast, so in just a few seconds, they all appeared in Jianchen's view. They all gave off powerful presences that were as tremendous as the ocean. At the forefront of the group was a sagely old man. He held a disc with the 8 trigrams. He was Master Chanlong. Jianchen slowly opened his eyes as well and stood up. After the period of recovery, the power of his soul had completely returned. He slowly glanced past the overgods gathered there and said indifferently, I never thought there'd be over 60 overgods. That has surprised me. I never thought that God King Duanmu's dwelling would be so attractive. Jianchen was very mentally pressured, as he had to face against so many overgods, but he appeared composed and fearless on the surface. Indeed, the overgods had increased from over 50 to over 60. The peak experts of the divine kingdoms in the surroundings had all gathered here. Every single one of them represented an ancestor of an organization. They were the few peak experts who sat at the very top in their own divine kingdoms. Little brother, who are you? Which clan or sect do you come from? Master Chanlong stared at Jianchen calmly. Basically, no one among the overgods knew the story about God King Duanmu's jade that had been spread or the fact that 3 tiny clans had once possessed the God King's jade. They had really suspected Jianchen to possess a great background when they saw him in the dwelling. Chapter 1743. Ling Hogong. As a result, the other overgods said nothing when they saw how Master Chanlong had asked the questions they wanted to know the answer to as well. They all stared at Jianchen coldly. I am Jianchen. I do not come from any clan or sect. I am an independent cultivator. Jianchen said indifferently with clasped hands. The overgods were all relieved when they heard that Jianchen was an independent cultivator. Soon afterwards, their gazes towards Jianchen became hostile. Brat, the key to the dwelling is on you. Who knows how many times you've entered this place in the past? You must have found a lot of good things in the past years, right? A skinny middle-aged man stepped out from the group. He stared at Jianchen sharply. At the same time, a powerful presence radiated from him and crushed down on Jianchen. The skinny man was an early overgod. Jianchen immediately felt like he had been thrown into the churning seas when the pressure descended upon him. It was like endless amounts of huge waves were striking his body. If his laws of the sword had not broken through, he would have definitely failed to resist the skinny man's powerful presence. However, he had reached sword spirit now, so even though his personal cultivation was lacking, his comprehension of laws was at the same level as the skinny man, or even slightly beyond his. Jian Chen's expression did not change at all. Suddenly, sharp sword qi radiated from him. At that moment, he seemed to have become a divine sword as the powerful and sharp sword qi directly dispersed the middle-aged man's tremendous presence. The skinny man's presence could no longer approach Jian Chen. Jian Chen did not lose the upper hand in a battle of presence because his comprehension of laws was no weaker than the skinny man's. A gleam of light flashed through the skinny man's eyes. He stared at Jian Chen with some surprise, as if he had not considered that Jian Chen could have comprehended the laws of the world to a similar level as his. You've actually also comprehended the laws of the sword. An interjection of surprise rang out in the group. An old man who carried a sword on his back made his way to the front. To no surprise, he was the Ling Hogong from the sword-seeking province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Ling Hogong stared at Jian Chen with much interest. His eyes shone brighter and brighter. He smiled. I've roamed through several divine kingdoms. Finally, I've found another overgod who has also comprehended the laws of the sword like me. Jian Chen, why don't we find a time to spar once the matter of God King Duanmu is settled? We can pursue the sword together. Ling Hogong's gaze was straightforward. He radiated with righteousness like a man of noble character. Surprise and joy filled his face. He was a fanatic of the sword, but ever since he became an overgod, he had never found another expert on the same level that he could spar with anymore. For the sake of sparring, he had once left the divine kingdom of Pingtian and journeyed through the neighboring divine kingdoms. Although he did come across a few other people who comprehended the laws of the sword, they were basically all deities or gods. He did not come across a single overgod, which filled him with much regret. Yet today he had found an overgod who also comprehended the laws of the sword, which he had spent many years searching for. He was absolutely overjoyed. As Ling Hogong walked out, a sliver of fear flashed through the eyes of many of the surrounding overgods. Ling Hogong was only an early overgod, but he comprehended the laws of the sword, which was one of the laws known to possess the greatest defensive powers among the 3,000 laws, just like the laws of destruction and the way of slaughter. As a result, Ling Hogong was extremely powerful, where there were barely any overgods who comprehended other laws that were his opponent at the same level. In the past, Ling Hogong had even fought a mid-overgod who comprehended the laws of fire to a draw. Ling Hogong's name had spread through all the surrounding divine kingdoms with that. Jian Chen could obviously sense Ling Hogong to be a person of noble character, or he would not give off such a sense of righteousness. As a result, Jian Chen clasped his fist in response. If I have the chance some other day, we can definitely study the sword together, senior. Haha, what senior? Jian Chen, you can just call me Ling Hogong. Ling Hogong laughed aloud. He was ecstatic about finding another overgod who could study the sword with him. However, Ling Hogong's eyes narrowed soon after. He stared at Jian Chen in both doubt and surprise as he asked, Jian Chen, your cultivation doesn't seem to have reached overgod. Ling Hogong was extremely surprised when he saw Jian Chen's level of cultivation. Although he was unable to properly gauge Jian Chen's strength, the senses of overgods were shockingly great. So not only had he discovered that Jian Chen was not an overgod, but he found that Jian Chen was not even a god. You have the level of comprehension of an overgod, but your personal cultivation is so limited. Tis. Ling Hogong was astounded inside. People like Jian Chen were extremely rare in the saints' world, because no one was so good at comprehending that their comprehension of laws would end up completely exceeding their personal cultivation. Moreover, he could tell with a single glance that Jian Chen's cultivation was not at such a low level because of injuries. Instead, he had just not cultivated to the level of his comprehension. Naturally, the other overgods could notice the abnormalities of Jian Chen if Ling Hogong could sense them. Gleams of light immediately flashed through their eyes with uncertainty. Looks like you've benefited greatly from God King Duanmu's dwelling, the skinny man sneered. He called out to Jian Chen coldly. So what if your comprehension of laws has reached the level of overgods? Your personal cultivation is so weak. Before an overgod you still can't fight back. Brat, Hand over your space ring obediently, and tell us what kind of fortuitous encounter you had in the dwelling that allowed your comprehension to increase so quickly. If your answer satisfies us, we might spare you. Otherwise, you should know what would happen." Jian Chen's face immediately sank in response to the skinny man's threats. He stared coldly at him and said with a gruff voice, "Come get my space ring if you want it. I'd like to see if you have the right to take it. You're looking to die." A gleam of killing intent flashed through the skinny man's eyes. A spear appeared in his hand, and he directly stabbed it towards Jian Chen with the laws of wood. Although Jian Chen's comprehension of laws was not weaker than his, the skinny man did not treat Jian Chen with much importance at all due to his limited cultivation. However, the skinny man still did not act carelessly. He used the power of his laws in his attack. A cold gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. However, at this moment, Ling Hogong struck out instead. He directly drew the sword on his back, and it shone brilliantly. It landed on the skinny man's spear with surging sword chi. Just this single attack had forced back the skinny man. "Ling Hogong, what are you doing?" The skinny man glared at Ling Hogong, but there was a sliver of fear in the depths of his eyes. God King Duanmu is already dead. Those who are fated to will obtain his treasures. Ling Hogong wielded his sword as he said righteously. The skinny man's face sank. If Ling Hogong wanted to protect Jian Chen, he really would not be able to do anything with his strength. However, when he glanced past the other overgods around him, he could not help but sneer. Ling Hogong was very powerful, but there were still a few other overgods more powerful than him present. Just when the skinny man wanted to ask someone to hold back Ling Hogong, Jian Chen's voice rang out. "Ling Hogong, since he wants my space ring so much, let him come and get it. Let's see whether he had the ability to take my space ring or not." Chapter 1744. Deterrence. The skinny man's face became even more sunken when he heard Jian Chen's naked provocation. Cold killing intent had already appeared in his eyes. Ling Hogong looked at Jian Chen. Although Jian Chen's comprehension of laws had reached the level of overgods, his personal cultivation was just too weak. On the other hand, the skinny man had reached overgod in both comprehension and cultivation. Even if Jian Chen had comprehended the laws of the sword, which was one of the laws with the greatest offense, Ling Hogong still did not believe that Jian Chen was the skinny man's opponent. However, Ling Hogong had nothing to say when he saw Jian Chen's confident bearing. He backed off to one side with his sword. He also wanted to see just what Jian Chen possessed that allowed him to not fear the skinny man. Master Chanlong, along with the several dozen overgods present, all remained silent. However, without any exception, their rather sharp gazes were all focused on Jian Chen. Many people believed that Jian Chen had managed to comprehend laws far greater than his personal cultivation, due to some fortuitous encounter in the dwelling. However, they did not want to take the lead in the matter, so they were more than happy for the skinny man to attack Jian Chen. Unless they were forced to, they really did not want to offend an overgod so easily. Especially one who had comprehended the laws of the sword that were known to be one of the laws with the greatest offense. Of course, there was another reason why they did not want to fight. They had not seen something that interested them. Once something that would be extremely beneficial to them appeared, they would be willing to throw their lives on the line, even if there were others at a higher level of cultivation altogether, let alone just people who had comprehended the laws of the sword. The young man with a fan and the middle-aged man referred to as Uncle Qin made their way into the God King's dwelling leisurely, walking behind everyone else. The young man looked around the entire way as if he found everything around him interesting. Is this God King Duama's dwelling? Why doesn't it seem impressive at all? The young man looked around and said with some disappointment. The middle-aged man remained silent. However, when he gazed into the depths of the dwelling and saw Jian Chen, a gleam of light actually flashed through his indifferent eyes. The comprehension of an overgod, but only the cultivation of a deity. What great talent! However, the energy he uses seems to be rather strange, which even seems blurry in my eyes. He does not practice a regular cultivation method. Uncle Qin murmured. Uncle Qin, are you talking about that person called Jian Chen? Since even you've described his talent as great, he really should be talented. I wonder how long he has been cultivating for, the young man said leisurely as he fanned himself gently. Uncle Qin became rather stern. In the end, he could not help but sigh in amazement. Young master, I feel that this person has been cultivating for less than 1,000 years. It's the first time I, Qinzheng, have seen a talent like this. The young man paused when he heard that. He stared at Uncle Qin in shock and said in disbelief, "What? He has been cultivating for less than 1,000 years. Doesn't that make his talent even greater than mine? Uncle Qin, are you certain? With the great disparity between our cultivation, there are a lot of things I can see through with a single glance, so there's nothing wrong with it. He has been cultivating for an even shorter time than you, young master," said Qinzheng. The young man immediately beamed. He said, "I heard that he's an independent cultivator before, without any clans or sects behind him. Uncle Qin, we have to rope in this person. It'll be best if he joins our clan." Uncle Qin's eyes shone brighter and brighter. He immediately expanded the senses of his soul and swept through all the regions that had lost their formations in the dwelling. He had naturally captured the sword comprehension building that Jianchen had been in before. However, not a single overgod present had sensed Uncle Qin's senses of the soul, including the few late overgods. In just a single moment, Uncle Qin discovered that Jianchen and the others had spent quite some time in the sword comprehension building through a few traces left behind. He immediately became even more joyful and said, "Looks like he comprehended his laws of the sword in the sword comprehension building. The mark that Duanmu left in there isn't anything impressive, so benefiting from it is nothing easy. However, Jianchen managed to break through to overgod just through the mark. What a great affinity for comprehension. It would a great service to the clan if we really do rope him in. Since we want to rope him in, why don't we hurry? Jianchen is in trouble right now. It's a good opportunity for us," the young man with a fan said eagerly. "No hurry. There's no need to hurry. We can see his strength in the meantime," said Qinzheng. On the other side of the group, the skinny Mini had already begun moving. He wielded his spear as the laws of wood condensed from the surroundings, stabbing towards Jianchen with the power of laws. The skinny man did not hold back with his attack. His gaze was cold, directly stabbing towards Jianchen's forehead to kill him. A gleam of cold light flashed through Jianchen's eyes as well when the skinny man stabbed out. With a thought, 2 finger-sized strands of profound sword chi appeared. They radiated with powerful sword intent, immediately making the expression of over half of the overgods present change. Even the eyes of late overgods narrowed. Everyone's face changed at that moment. All their attention was focused on Jianchen, or more accurately, the 2 strands of sword chi above Jianchen's head. The 2 tiny strands threatened all of them. The weaker they were, the stronger the sense of threat they felt. The skinny man's face changed drastically. Without any hesitation, his hand tremored, and he struck out with even more power than before. Swish! With a flash of silver light, one of the sword chi above Jianchen's head shot out. It moved extremely quickly, having surpassed the speed of lightning. It collided with the skinny man's spear. Boom! A deafening sound rang out from the clash. The skinny man only felt a great force directly knock his spear aside while his laws of wood were directly dispersed by the sword chi. The profound sword chi had nullified his attack easily. It did not just stop there. After smashing through the skinny man's attack, the profound sword chi remained just as powerful before, continuing onwards with the same sword intent that terrified the overgods. It directly shot towards the skinny man's forehead under his shocked gaze. "No!" The skinny man bellowed out in fear. He was completely unable to dodge the incoming sword chi. All he could do was watch it expand as it neared him and approached his forehead. Silently, the profound sword chi shot through the skinny man's forehead and emerged from behind. The skinny man's gaze became stunned. Fear lingered in his eyes. His soul had not even been able to escape before the profound sword chi, and it was directly wiped out on the spot. Chapter 1745, A Foothold Plop. The skinny man's body struck the floor. His eyes remained wide open, dying with regrets. Perhaps even he himself had never expected Jianchen to possess such terrifying strength. The profound sword qi had killed him instantly, where even his soul could not escape. It fell silent for a time after that. Everyone stared at Jianchen and the dead man on the ground in disbelief as their hearts churned. The other early overgods could not help but stagger backwards. Their gazes towards Jianchen were filled with fear. All of them shivered when they realized that another strand of profound sword qi hovered above Jianchen's head. Jianchen did not immediately put away the second strand of profound sword qi. The finger-sized sword qi remained above his head, radiating with surging sword intent as if it was warning all the overgods present. Ling Hogong also gasped. His gaze towards Jianchen underwent a tremendous change. And he also found himself to be quite the fool. He had originally believed that Jianchen was not the skinny man's opponent and wanted to help him out, but looking at it now, he did not need any help at all. With just a single attack, he slew an early overgod. Jianchen's strength left Ling Hogong astounded. What was that? Was it some treasure? Or some secret technique? Or some powerful battle skill? Did a god king leave behind those two strands of sword qi? It's impossible for the sword qi to be left behind by a god king. I think it's some powerful sword technique. He killed an early overgod instantly with a single strand of sword qi. If he used them simultaneously, even mid-overgods would not be able to fend it off. Even late overgods would become heavily injured. The surrounding overgods all communicated with one another secretly, as they discussed the profound sword qi with great intensity. Jianchen had succeeded in showing off his might by killing the skinny man, and everyone present had witnessed his power. They understood that he was not a person they could just provoke. Jianchen knew that he had already gained a foothold among the overgods, so he slowly put the second strand of profound sword qi away. He looked around and clasped his fist towards everyone. Everyone, I do not know much about God King Duanmu's dwelling, but I am willing to share what I know with everyone. All their faces changed when they heard that. Jianchen is willing to share the information about the dwelling with everyone. You have my admiration, Jianchen. Ling Hogong clasped his hands towards Jianchen. I am Guhan Shui. Thank you, Jianchen. Once the matter regarding the dwelling has been resolved, I hope you can visit my Guhan clan as a guest. Although I have not comprehended the laws of the sword, we can share and discuss our experiences and knowledge regarding cultivation. Jianchen turned around. Guhan Shui was a great beauty who only seemed to be in her 20s. Haha, I also hope Jianchen can visit my Feng family in the future as well. I've studied formations a little. Although this old man is unable to study the sword with you like Ling Hogong, this old man does like alcohol very much and has collected a lot of it. This old man just wonders if you'd do me the honor of drinking together. Feng Buell smiled. He referred to himself as an old man, but in reality, he only seemed to be in his 20s. He was handsome and graceful. However, Jianchen did not find it surprising at all, because even though a few people did not seem particularly old among the overgods present, they were all monsters who had cultivated for dozens, or even hundreds of millennia. A few of the surrounding overgods immediately tried to befriend Jianchen. As a person who wielded the laws of the sword, there were very few people who could defeat Jianchen unless they had comprehended a law that possessed similar offense. Moreover, his powerful strands of profound sword qi struck fear into everyone's heart. By talking to him, they acted as if even if they could not befriend him, they would not want to become his enemy. Jianchen returned their greetings one by one. Through his conversations with them, he managed to gain an initial understanding of some of the overgods. None of them were simple. However, Jianchen also understood that these people were so friendly because there was no conflict of interest yet. Once they ventured into the depths of the dwelling and had to fight for God King Duanmu's treasures, they could become opponents or even enemies at any time. Soon afterwards, Jianchen shared everything he knew about God King Duanmu's dwelling. In reality, none of it was a secret. It was just information on the situation in the dwelling. The overgods could obtain the information just by looking. When they learnt that Jianchen had only obtained the items left behind by God King Duanmu's disciple, they did not become interested at all. They were all the ancestors of clans and sects, so they had all accumulated a vast wealth across the years. What really interested them in God King Duanmu's dwelling was his legacy. They naturally felt no interest towards what the disciple owned. Of course, they did not know about the previous pills Jianchen had found, like the soul recovery pill. Otherwise, they would lose their composure. With that, no one purposefully targeted Jianchen anymore. At the same time, due to the shocking strength he had demonstrated, no one dared to provoke him without good reason, even with the great disparity between his comprehended laws and personal cultivation. The skinny man had become the best example of what would happen if they did that. With Master Chanlong in the lead, everyone continued forwards. Jianchen also mixed into the group and followed everyone towards the very depths of the dwelling. The space ring from the overgod he had slain ended up in Jianchen's hands as well. Jianchen checked through the space ring and found that the skinny man was nowhere near as wealthy as God King Duanmu's disciple. However, there were still a lot of divine crystals, including low, mid, and high-grade crystals. There were also other random materials and a few pills. Jianchen casually put away the space ring, sending it into the Bright Moon Divine Hall silently. After passing on some information, he gave all the low and mid-grade divine crystals to everyone in the Divine Hall to use for cultivation. He kept the high-grade divine crystals for himself, as he planned to exchange them for mid-grade divine crystals in the future. However, to Jianchen's surprise, Shangguan Mu'er, who had remained within the Divine Hall for the entire time absorbing divine crystals, had reached the peak of reciprocity and was about to attain godhood. The cultivation of the others had increased drastically as well. The white tiger and seven-colored heaven-devouring beast were only slightly slower than Shangguan Mu'er. They had reached reciprocity, and they were currently at early reciprocity. Chapter 1746. The very depths among the group who had come up from the Tianyuan continent, Shangguan Mu'er, the white tiger, and the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast had strengthened up the fastest. They were also the strongest three among them. Xiongzhong still remained at early reciprocity. Rui Jin, Honglian, and Heiyu had all reached the origin realm. They had progressed past receival and reached returnance. Although they did not cultivate as quickly as the white tiger and the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast, they would still be regarded as geniuses with their level of talent in the saints' world. The senses of Jianchen's soul did not linger in the Bright Moon Divine Hall for long. It receded from the space ring, and he looked around at the overgods around him. Gradually he became determined. He had already secretly made up his mind to assist the Mo clan in gaining a stable footing, and also move them into the provincial city after the matters with God King Duanmu were settled. Once the Mo clan gained a stable status, he would let everyone out from the Divine Hall, and allow them to remain in the Mo clan to cultivate. He did not do this in the past because he was not strong enough, and he had also offended the Liu family. However, the situation was different now. He was confident about gaining a stable footing within the divine kingdom of Pingtian with his current strength. After all, there were only so many overgods in the divine kingdom. There were only around a dozen when the ancestors from the 5 provinces and the overgods in the royal city were included. Moreover, most of them were only early overgods. Please wait, everyone. This formation is extremely powerful, so allow me to study it. Master Chanlong's old voice rang out. He sat before the formation, and mysterious inscriptions appeared from his disc with the 8 trigrams. The surrounding overgods all sat down to rest. Master Chanlong was the person most skilled with formations amongst all of them, so the matter of destroying the formation had fallen to him. If it were not for Master Chanlong, who had found the foundation of the formation and gotten them to directly attack its weak points, they probably would not have been able to enter God King Duanmu's dwelling, even with over 60 overgods gathered together. Jianchen stared at Master Chanlong, who was studying the formation. Jianchen also sat down quietly. Very how you had previously found the weak point of the formation, but this point was not fixed. It would constantly move about as the formation operated, so he had no idea where the weak point had moved to now. In the current situation, it was clearly unsuitable for Fairy How You appear. Once so many overgods took interest in Fairy How You, even he himself would not be able to protect her, so he obviously could not count on Fairy Hao Yu to smash through the formations. Many gods had entered God King Duanmu's dwelling by now. The overgods had already gathered on the path towards the very depths, so the gods did not dare to approach them. Instead, they dispersed everywhere in search of their own fortune. In the end, quite a few gods entered the dwellings of God King Duanmu's disciple and grand disciples in an attempt to comprehend the marks left in there. After them, even many deities entered. Brother Jianchen, I heard that the people from the Mo clan and the Ando clan from the Dong'an province had entered the dwelling beforehand. Are you also a part of our divine kingdom of Pingtian? As the overgods rested, Ling Hogong instead made his way to Jianchen's side and asked politely. A few of the overgods immediately opened their eyes when they heard Ling Hogong's question. They all looked at Jianchen. I'm not from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, but now that you mention it, you can consider me as half a citizen, Jianche smiled. He had arrived in the territory of the divine kingdom of Pingtian as soon as he came to the saint's world, so it was reasonable to describe himself as half a citizen. Ling Hogong chuckled. I was just asking casually, and I didn't think that I'd be right. Come, Jianchen, let me introduce some people to you. You already knew Guhan Shui and Feng Buell. This is Eugene, the ancestor of the Yu family from the Daji province. Ling Hogong extended his finger towards a gray-haired old man as he said that. Eugene clasped his fist towards Jianchen and smiled gently. This is Bing Lu, the ancestor of the Yubing clan of the Frigid Snow province. Ling Hogong continued his introduction. The hunchbacked old man with the dragon-headed staff nodded towards Jianchen. He said in his old voice, Brother Jianchen, if you have the time in the future, you have to come to visit my Yubing clan. Jianchen returned his greeting. He planned to gain a stable footing in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, so there was naturally no harm in knowing a few overgods of the divine kingdom. Afterwards, Ling Hogong introduced a few more overgods to Jianchen. They were the ones who had opened their eyes earlier. They all came from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jianchen had already met a few of these overgods before. He understood that Ling Hogong was currently introducing them all to him, because he wanted to rope him into the divine kingdom of Pingtian, so that they would be able to work together against the overgods of the other divine kingdoms. This was because they did not want God King Duanmu's items to end up with people from other divine kingdoms. After all, God King Duanmu's dwelling was in their divine kingdom. Brother Jianchen, I hope we can all work together when we fight for the treasure later, so that we can fend off the outsiders together. Once we obtain the treasure, we can split it according to our contributions. I was wondering if you would be interested in joining us. A voice that only the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian could hear rang in Jianchen's head. Jianchen knew that the person speaking was a middle-aged man called Yang Kai. He was an overgod from the royal city as well as the strongest overgod in the entire divine kingdom. He had reached late overgod. How can I decline since it's senior Yang Kai who's asking? Moreover, with so many overgods present, we probably won't end up with anything if we fight by ourselves. Working together would be the best. Jianchen replied secretly as well and agreed with Yang Kai. The overgods of the divine kingdom all beamed. They had witnessed Jianchen's strength before. Killing early overgods was no problem for him, and he could even threaten mid-overgods, making him more powerful than a lot of them. Their side would become stronger with his addition. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, a month had already passed since Master Chanlong had begun studying the formation. I've found the crucial point of the formation. Everyone, it'll all be up to you next. Master Chanlong's voice finally rang out after a month of studying the formation. Everyone stood up when they heard that. They all attacked the location Master Chanlong had specified. Jianchen could tell with a single glance that the method Master Chanlong used to break through formations was completely different from Fairy Hao Yu's. Fairy Hao Yu specified the weakest point of the formations, and this point would change as the formation constantly operated. However, the weakest point Master Chanlong found was a crucial point of the formation. It seemed to be fixed and would not move around. The formation collapsed very soon under the barrage of over 60 overgods. God King Duanmu was powerful, but he only possessed great mastery over the laws of space and the way of sword. His accomplishments with formations were not particularly great, So even though the formation was at the level of God King's, it was a relatively weaker version. God King Duanmu's formation naturally would not be able to pose a problem with Master Chanlong and the over 60 overgods present. Afterwards, everyone broke through one formation after another. In just a year's time, they arrived in the depths of the dwelling, where God King Duanmu used to cultivate. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.